on the 11 o'clock hour of BPR live from the Boston Public Library. New polling seems to show that Donald Trump's most popular policy isn't DOGE cuts or trade wars or strongman actions on the global stage, but cruelty is the point, immigration policies. We'll open the phone and text lines and ask why. Why Americans aren't turned off by massed ICE agents snatching people off the streets? Is the issue media coverage, economic anxiety, racism, or is this just who we are as Americans?
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's our Tuesday check-in with CNN's John King, Chief National Correspondent. We'll talk about the Iran-Israeli ceasefire. Will it work? And how Trump's latest F-bombing dropping tough talk indicates his frustration that it may not. It's all ahead on the 11 o'clock hour at BPR, GBH, and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library.
Is testifying before the House Financial Services Committee. He says economic pressure from President Trump's tariffs has eased a bit, but Powell says they're still likely to push prices higher in the future for consumers.
The effects of tariffs will depend, among other things, on their ultimate level. Expectations of that level, and thus of the related economic effects, reached a peak in April and have since declined. Even so, increases in tariffs this year are likely to push up prices and weigh on economic activity.
Powell also told lawmakers the Fed will watch to see how the economy copes before acting on interest rates. President Trump has been pummeling Powell online, demanding that the Fed cut rates. Israel says it carried out a limited strike on Iran today. That was after President Trump publicly warned Israel not to retaliate for Iranian missile fire. That occurred after a ceasefire had taken effect. However, Iran denied the missile fire took place. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv.
Hours into the ceasefire, President Trump issued a remarkable and rare public rebuke of Israel, calling on Israeli pilots to go home and not to bomb Iran. He told reporters he was not happy with Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office issued a timeline of events, saying Iran fired missiles at Israel after the ceasefire went into effect, causing no casualties or damage, and that in response, Israeli warplanes bombed an Iranian radar installation near Tehran. It said Trump and Netanyahu spoke and Israel held back from additional strikes. Despite Israel's limited strike, Trump wrote online that Israel would not attack Iran and that its planes would head home, and said the Israel-Iran ceasefire is in effect. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Trump is flying to the NATO summit in the Netherlands. He was asked today if he's committed to the NATO principle that an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all. Trump says he will give his definition on that when he gets to the NATO summit. The federal government is suing Washington state over a new law that some Catholic priests refuse to follow. From member station KUOW, Scott Greenstone reports.
A law that would go into effect next month requires Catholic priests to report sexual abuse, even if that information is learned during confession, a typically confidential sacrament. Here's how Yakima's Bishop Joseph Tyson responded to the law's passage last month.
Our clergy are prepared to go to jail before breaking the seal of confession.
A new lawsuit President Trump's Civil Rights Division filed calls the law anti-Catholic. At least 6 other states have similar laws. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson, a lifelong Catholic himself, said in a statement, quote, "It is disappointing but not surprising to see the DOJ seek to shield and protect child abusers." For NPR News, I'm Scott Greenstone in Seattle.
This is NPR.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. A local emergency room doctor says it's a good idea to stay inside and avoid sun exposure if you can today, as extreme heat blankets Massachusetts. Dr. Lauren Rice is chief of pediatric emergency medicine at Tufts Medical Center. She says she's most worried about heat exhaustion and heat stroke because that can be deadly. And she says heat exhaustion is more common in kids than grown-ups.
They tend to lose more water when they sweat. And they're not great about knowing when to drink more water. So they don't have that same thirst mechanism that we have as adults. And so I would say definitely kids are more vulnerable to this, as well as elderly patients too.
And doctors say those experiencing homelessness and people with pre-existing medical conditions are at a higher risk of heat-related illness. People and pets aren't the only ones impacted. The MBTA says trains may be traveling more slowly today. That's to reduce heat-related stress on the tracks. One firefighter was treated for heat exhaustion early today in Framingham as crews fought flames that tore through a unit at a condo complex. Officials say they were treated and released at the Metro West Medical Center. No other injuries are reported. Everybody got out safely. Officials say that unit was being renovated, and the cause of the fire was accidental. It was caused by the spontaneous combustion of oily rags. In sports, the Red Sox going for a win against the Angels on the West Coast tonight. A record-breaking 100 degrees possible in Boston today. The heat index values could be even higher. Mostly clear skies tonight, lows in the 70s. A chance of thunderstorms and scattered showers tomorrow, highs in the 90s. Right now it's 93 in Boston. The heat index is 99.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
He is Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio on GBH and NEPM. We are broadcasting live. Thank you from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Going to be back here tomorrow with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. She's going to be with us between 11 and 12, taking our questions and yours. Hello, Jim.
Hey, Marjorie, and I should say, even if you're not crazy about our show, it's air conditioned here. So I would suggest, for whatever reason moves you,
I've got my sweater on.
Down. It's pretty great. We'll start today with immigration, as a new poll from NBC shows President Trump's most popular policy is also his cruelest. His approval ratings are highest for his actions on immigration. 51% of Americans approve of his handling of border security and immigration, while a minority, somewhere in the mid-40s, approve of his job performance overall. This comes on the heels of a divided Supreme Court decision yesterday, which I would have to say, it's hard to rate him, is among the most outrageous ever, allowing the administration to restart swift removals of migrants to countries other than their homelands, some of which are some of the most dangerous countries on earth, sort of exactly the thing Trump and his cronies did to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, sending him to that gulag-like prison in El Salvador. So we're opening the lines, phone and text, to ask you, why do so many of us support the cruelest of his policies? The number is 877-301-8970. By the way, if you're a library, go see our colleagues Nia or Hannah. You could make a comment from right here. Trump has ordered, you know this, raids at workplaces targeting people coming to and from legal immigration proceedings, sowed fears in those communities, often ICE agents with masks. We read about mothers with no criminal records deported. How about this father who was a lawn worker who had been in the country decades, no crimes. His 3 sons were Marines serving this country.
Yeah, one of them still is, I think.
2 of them still are. Grabbed him, and he's being deported. But still, a slim majority of the country seems to approve of this. What does it say about us that we're generally okay with this being done in our name? The number is 877-301-8970. What's your answer to the question as to why we support this more than anything else he's doing?
I think some people are unaware that it's not the worst of the worst that are getting deported, and maybe unaware that I think most of us thought if you came here from Guatemala and they're going to deport you, they're going to send you back to Guatemala. I don't think a lot of people realize that you might be sent to South Sudan and be in a place in the middle of a civil war where you don't speak the language or have any kind of family. I don't think people thought that it was going to be people like this guy whose 3 sons are Marines.
Narcisco Barranco is his name.
But here's Sean from Boston. He says, I don't condone the behavior of the Trump administration. I think many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and see immigrants getting benefits such as food stamps, subsidized housing, etc. The American dream is becoming more and more elusive, and people are fighting for their piece of the pie. Generally speaking, you don't get food stamps. You don't get subsidized housing. You do get a place to stay when you're here, and there are some things you do get. You do get if you go to the emergency room, if you need medical care. But this is not some universal thing all around the country that you're getting those kind of benefits.
This is basically an economic anxiety text from Sean in Boston, which I understand, even though I think, as we have learned, most of the jobs that undocumented people are doing in this country are not jobs that Americans are dying to do on farms and in the hospitality industry.
But I do think there's a lot of trade stuff that is done by people who are undocumented. I mean, that was a joke about roofers. Yeah. The company may be an American company, but the guys on the roof are listening to Spanish music and they're speaking, they're not speaking English. So I think that there's a lot of people in the trades that are and that bothers people because they think they are being undercut. But ironically, if those people were able to become citizens, then they would no longer be undercutting everybody else because they have to make the minimum wage. The reason they're being able to be undercut is because they're not American citizens.
Well, another part of this, I am convinced, is because Trump has made racism, expressions of racism, permissible publicly. I think that's they don't look like a lot of people in this country. Their skin color is different. I think that is a big part of this deal. One more thing.
Except that so many Latinos voted for Trump, and because
if you remember, I don't think he said, by the way, there's this guy who has 3 sons who served in the Marines. I'm going to deport. I'm deporting that mother who's never committed a crime in Ohio. I'm going to grab this woman off the streets of Somerville, masked people who don't identify themselves. What Trump did is a misdirection play, the worst of the worst, the criminals. And by the way, if he was deporting only the worst of the worst and the criminals,
that would be different.
He'd have 100% support on this thing.
Yeah, I think. Well, let's hear from Joe Rogan.
This is really great.
Because he is a very influential podcaster. Many people think that he may have turned the election because so many young men particularly listen to him. Here he is in a recent episode speaking out against ICE raids in a conversation with comic Luis Gomez and podcaster Big J. Ogerson. Here he is.
There's a big job site that I used to have to go on that's in the southern part of Virginia, like not far from North Carolina. And somebody was sending me pictures there from the other day, but they had a big ICE raid and there was dudes like running through people were just escaping the job, like running away from the job and stuff. It's nuts. But
why? Like gang members, yes. Criminals, yes. Why? Like, I think as crazy as it sounds, the only way to do this and look like you have a heart is evaluate people on a case-by-case basis. Like, there's good people.
Let's hope Donald Trump doesn't hear Joe Rogan. He's going to flip 180 degrees by sunset.
I mean, for the Supreme Court to say it's okay to send people back to places where they could be tortured, I would say it's rather heartless.
Not back to places, 2 places.
2 places where they might be tortured. That places they didn't even come from.
Right.
Yeah, because Obrego Garcia is from El Salvador. Conditions have changed somewhat in El Salvador since he came here from El Salvador. They're better, thank goodness. But I mean, to go to places like I mentioned, South Sudan before, where they are in the middle of a civil war, so it's a pretty scary place to be. Or Libya is a pretty scary place to be if you're from Guatemala.
By the way, a texter. I never know whether to read these because I never know if they're trolling. Or just stupid. Jim, it's easy, anonymous, of course. It's easy to figure out. It says that people are sick of the crime and want the laws of our country enforced. The only problem, as I'm assuming, texter, that is undocumented people in every single analysis commit less crime than people who are citizens of the United States of America. I mean, I refuse. You're going to say they don't know it because they watch Fox News. It's almost impossible not to know it. There have been 1 million studies on this thing. And so maybe I shouldn't have read that. In any case, 877-301-8970. Let's go to Ed in Worcester. Ed, you're first. Thank you much for your call. Hi.
Hi, I support Trump. I don't think this is cruel. We make 1 million new citizens a year. Mm-hmm. If we were a racist country, we would not do that. You just can't sell this to people.
Ed, did you see the video of Rumeysa Ozturk being taken off the streets of Somerville?
No, I didn't.
I figured you didn't. Maybe you should watch it and call us back.
Yeah.
She was here legally, is here legally. Masked people who didn't identify themselves, grabbed off the street. How long was she in jail? 70 days, 60 days?
Weeks and weeks.
Whatever.
And wrongly, by the way, she wrote an op-ed that was complaining about what's going on in Gaza with the people getting no health care and starving and stuff like that, which I think a lot of people do not think is a great situation. That's why she was sent. There's also the father of the 3 Marines.
Yeah, how about him, Ed?
It was the same thing where he was taken away by masked men, ICE people. Police officers don't wear masks. I don't know why ICE thinks it's okay for them to wear masks with the excuse they're going to get doxxed. Cops could be doxxed too. And
they have their names on their thing.
Their names,
cops.
and they have, and many of them have cameras. But Ed, I think that's the thing. I think you mentioned you didn't know about Ramesa Ozturk. I think a lot of people don't see what's going on with people who are legally here. You know what I mean?
Ed?
Well, did she not get a hearing? Has she not been released?
After 45 days. Ed, here's the proposal. I'm going to incarcerate you for, wait, I'm talking, then you talk. I'm going to incarcerate you for 45 days. After that, you can have a hearing. Is that okay?
Yes, if I were a guest in another country and I did something that country didn't like, I would expect that to happen to me. Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is, they didn't do something. Unless you think we have no freedom of speech in the United States of America, we do have First Amendment rights. So to say they did something the country didn't like, I mean, we have people that are here from other countries have freedom of speech rights too, Ed. But thank you for the call.
And due process rights
anyway,
until
and that's
yesterday.
the thing, that they don't have hearings, and they just get shipped off, and their family doesn't know where they are. They can't speak with lawyers. This thing with Ozturk happened in Somerville. She wound up in Louisiana, and the reason she wound up in Louisiana is because the courts are tougher down there. 45 days, our staff just said, she was held before she got released by the courts. Mahmoud Khalil got released by the courts. It took forever there too, but he was released as well. He was the guy that was doing. He was a
Columbia grad student.
Grew up in a Syrian refugee camp. He's a Palestinian, grew up in a refugee camp, and he's standing up for the people in Gaza, which I think is kind of a natural thing to do, to stand up for the people in Gaza. I mean, as we saw on the news, you get children over there eating sand. I mean, it breaks your heart.
You mentioned Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I assume he's one of the few that everybody knows about. He was deported. Trump's own lawyers said this was an administrative error, but then, of course, the Attorney General says that's not what the boss wants, so now he's a public menace. A judge characterized what Pam Bondi had to say about Abrego Garcia as, quote, dubious claims bordering on physical impossibility, and that none of the evidence that her lawyers were providing would be admissible because it was fourth-generation hearsay, yet it fits their narrative that he's a horrible trafficker of human beings, even though there's no evidence to that effect. It's just Nick and Chatham. Hi. Nick.
I don't know.
Put you on hold. Let's go to Liam in Medfield.
Hi, Liam.
Hi guys, how are you doing? I called yesterday and I couldn't get through to you guys. I'm still just so disturbed from what I heard from the woman in Lexington that called in yesterday, who is from Israel, talking about how all Palestinians and anyone who is pro-Palestine wants a one-state solution. I would say anybody, along with the last caller, to watch the CBS News interview with I'm going to butcher the name, but Mohammed Khalil is, I think, how it's pronounced.
Yes.
It is.
He had his first interview after being released last night and said on multiple occasions that they all want a two-state solution and don't understand why there can't be a two-state solution. So to all the people that keep calling in and saying things that just aren't true, I don't know if you're just not listening to Jim and Marjorie or you're not watching the news and you just call in with these thoughts and Fox News, but I'd recommend you do your research before you call in.
Well, we love your fact-checking, Liam.
Everyone should be listening to
whoever we are.
To me and Jim, of course. But I do think
Liam,
that's a lot of the problem,
where
people get their news from. They're not sitting here like we are in this business reading 9,000 things every night. They're getting snippets here and there, and I don't think most
Ed, the first caller who said he's fine with it, Ed acknowledges that a ton of these people have no criminal record. But they're here illegally, so go for it. So he does know the facts.
Well, you can say go for
Liam,
it, but again, I think when you say go for it, do you mean if you came here from Guatemala, do you get sent back to Guatemala? Or when you came here illegally, which is a misdemeanor, do you get sent to a prison in South Sudan? I mean, I think that's the issue, without any kind of hearing. Is that what we think is the way to conduct ourselves in the United States of America? I don't think most people believe that, Jim.
Well, you say that these polls are a reflection of, let's call it ignorance. The 51% approve of this, his handling of immigration issues. I think more people know about it than you do. And I think Donald Trump has basically permitted people to voice their cruelest instincts And in this case, it happens to be against the migrants. And we're going to talk in the next hour to some advocates for trans people who had a pretty rough day in the Supreme Court this week, too. 877-301-8970.
Sarah in New Hampshire, thanks for calling.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. First time, long time.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I work in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and I was at our central office the other day. I ended up backing out of a parking spot, and there was a gentleman that was also backing out at the same time. We ended up hitting each other, and when I pulled back into the spot and got out to give him my information, he was starting to drive away. I stopped him and noticed I had...
Oh, Sarah.
My car had...
Sarah, we lost you after you say you stopped him. Pick it up there. We lost the connection.
Oh, okay. So I tried to give him my information, and he was driving away. And I said, "Sir, I've really damaged your truck." And he said, "I've got to go." So he was a Latino individual, and I'm assuming he was just afraid that he was going to get caught by ICE or something, and I felt horrible. And I just wanted to say these are the kind of things that are happening.
Well, you know, Sarah, if you listen to the show, which you apparently do, we've talked to doctors who say young kids are not being brought in for health appointments, educators who say parents on some days are not sending their kids to school, on and on, for fear of being snatched. And these are families, I want to make it clear again, who've committed no crimes. They have come to this country undocumented, but that's what you get. And by the way, a lot of law enforcement people say it inhibits their ability to do their job because a lot of people are too scared testify. Sarah, thank you much for your call. We appreciate it.
We have an anonymous texter who says, "You two make me sick. Why don't you go to another country and start protesting and see what happens to you?" Actually, in most other countries, you'd be okay. You wouldn't be okay in China. You wouldn't be okay in Russia. You wouldn't be okay in North Korea. But you certainly would be, okay in Europe and most of the Scandinavian countries and a lot of South American countries. So everybody isn't an authoritarian place. And let's go to Eric in Haverhill. Just raise it a little bit so I can read the rest of it. Listen to this. "I'm a middle-aged white American. Just prior to the 2008 housing crisis, I had a construction company, and almost all the Americans that I could get to work for me either had drug or alcohol problems, psychological problems, or they were half-wits. You typically do not have that problem with immigrants who are here to work. Most of the Americans that work for me, half the time they were calling in sick for one reason or another. At the time, I felt like Americans didn't want those jobs. I think the majority of immigrants are overwhelmingly decent, hardworking people and don't deserve to be treated in this manner." You know, you have to say, when you look at what people go through to get here, and you're traveling through jungles, with babies on their backs and leaving everything behind and going through that hardship, it's a pretty resilient, impressive crowd of people. And when you look at what you find in the United States of America, first and second generation immigrants do extraordinarily well. So maybe there's something to what Eric just had to say.
Well, also to the people who have been critical, including Ed, who had the courage to call, unlike some of the others who send anonymous texts, you should feel free to call at 877-301-8970. Marjorie and I, at least Marjorie, occasionally lives in the real world, and I try to venture into it from time to time. Even if they are here undocumented, there are huge industries on which every one of you and we are dependent, from hospitality to farming to
nannies,
which are hugely dependent
healthcare workers
on undocumented people.
Nursing homes.
Read the newspapers and see about how many small businesses are failing. On one hand, because of tariffs, and on the other hand, because their workforce is disappearing as well.
Someone just texted to say, "Sad to say, the majority of Americans don't pay attention to the news, have no idea what's happening. Many people I talk to are uninformed, too busy putting their heads down and living their lives, which is sad and scary." I think there's some truth to that.
Here's Carla from Seattle. "As a person of color who's faced racism in this country, cruelty is the point. Some Trump supporters are racist without admitting it. They are okay with cruelty. Their social media posts are frightening." I don't know what racism is clearly a part of it, and it's also a part of Donald Trump's agenda, and he's not afraid to voice
But
it.
again, there are certain things that break through. Remember, this was a while ago now. The picture of the little girl and her father that drowned coming across the river.
Know, yeah.
The pictures of children usually get to people's conscience, and so I think when you see it, it's kind of hard to think this is okay. I mean, I get the southern border because the sense that we were getting overwhelmed and people were just coming across, and the Democrats really missed that upsetness of that total uncoordination kind of stuff. But to me, Trump could have shut down the southern border, declared victory, and not done any of this stuff. And he would have won on immigration because it was the border, I think, that was upsetting people the most. Dave from Belchertown. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Dave.
Oh, yes. Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Thanks for calling.
Okay, yes. Kind of an instructive book, sad but instructive, is Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem. A rabbi mentioned that around the high holidays, and she coined the term the banality of evil.
Yeah.
And, in Hitler's Germany, the Jews and other minorities were gradually, over 7-8 years, viewed as less than human, so that subhuman things could be done to them. They gradually lost their rights, and people who had lived alongside Jews no longer saw them as essentially as human beings. I think through right-wing media and through Trump's administration and somewhat politicians, immigrants are being viewed as people that are less than human, that you could do things to that you never imagined having been done to people in your family or friends or other, like, white American people.
I think
that's sad but true.
Dead on,
Yeah.
Dave. Thank you.
You wonder why in ICE
human.
detention facilities people are sleeping on concrete floors with aluminum blankets. Can we do better
Do you
than
wonder
that?
why the Secretary of Homeland Security went with her $50,000 watch and posed in front of half-naked men in that prison in El Salvador?
She's a puppy killer, Jim. I mean,
Can I read one last
go much
text?
further than that.
Which really also, this is really, Aaron in Hopkinton, I couldn't agree more. We support it because most of us don't really care about anyone but ourselves. We love a scapegoat for all of our life's ills. They're a bunch of fools that don't understand how bad this is going to bite them in their butts. I'm with you, Aaron.
Okay. We're going to keep taking your calls here. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. We're talking about the Supreme Court's decision to allow Donald Trump to deport migrants to countries they didn't come from, even if they are countries where they might realistically expect to be tortured, if not killed. 877-301-8970 is the number.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Urvashi Vad. She was an outspoken immigrant and lesbian. She was the first woman of color to lead a national gay and lesbian organization. And she was instrumental in shaping the modern-day gay rights movement. Now a treasure trove of her writings and speeches are in a new book with a foreword by Tony Kushner. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum with Ming Fei, Edge of the Garden, a profound and playful exhibition filled with sculptures of oversized fruits and hybrid plants, opening June 26th. More at gardnermuseum.org. And New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, a garden destination 50 miles from Boston. Visitors can discover summer with thousands of blooms, twilight experiences, art exhibitions, and educational programs for all ages. nebg.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, and we're air conditioned. We're back at the library tomorrow with Governor Maura Healey. She'll be here for an hour from 11 to noon to take our questions and yours. If you're tuning in, we're talking about Trump's immigration policy, by far the most popular policy, and Marjorie and I would argue the cruelest policy that the most Americans support. We want to know why you think a majority of people in this country are content with how Donald Trump is handling this immigration issue. 877-301-8970.
We're getting other emails or texts, I should say, from people in the trades complaining about the American workers. My father was a stonemason for 30 years. The only laborers he ever employed that were on time, cheerful, efficient, had excellent craftsmanship were Hispanic. Everyone else was late, hungover. and had a sense of entitlement. Oh, my goodness. I think that's maybe a little bit over the top, but what the heck. Nick in Chatham, thank you for calling.
Hello, Nick. Hi.
Hey there.
Hello.
Hi.
Actually, Nick in Hartford.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Hello to you, wherever
sorry.
you are,
I'm
Nick.
sorry,
Welcome.
Nick.
Yeah, so I'm completely at a loss for how to deal with either the constant barrage of like media analyses coming out right now saying, oh, here are what Trump voters wanted from mass deportations. Here's what they didn't want. I feel like people were screaming about this for years.
Yeah.
And I don't really have the patience for dealing with this equivocation of a bunch of spoiled Americans that evidently want credit to say that they belong here simply because they were born in a certain place at a certain time, rather than, I don't know, earn their citizenship, work really hard, love their neighbors, whatever. And I don't know, how do you all have to ask these questions of people in the real world? Because I find myself just falling into absolute rage, having worked in farms and restaurants and all these places, seeing the value that these immigrants bring to our community. And then I have to hear the worst spoiled people say that they deserve something for just winning the lottery of where they were born. And it is just absolutely maddening that we now have an electorate that is just going off of vibes, not information, as you're pointing out and other callers have been pointing out.
Nick, why do you think you're an outlier? Why do you think you're an outlier with that point of view?
Honestly, because I really don't think people want to think very hard. It's really, really easy to simply be angry and feel justified in your decisions when you're operating in rage and say, oh, I wish that this would just happen. Like, I had to deal with family members that were mad that people might have put Osama bin Laden on trial when he was captured rather than killing him, because they just thought, well, we should have just killed him. And I pointed out, due process, he's going to get charged anyway. And like, isn't this more emblematic of American exceptionalism in our court system? But they don't want to hear it. They just want cruelty, violence, things to be done quickly, no matter what cost. And now that people are seeing what the fallout is, I feel like this is just America, and it has been for decades. And I don't know how to even tell my kid we do things correctly, because we clearly don't.
That was one hell of a phone call, Nick. Call us again, please. Thank you for your voicing your perspective. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. I would argue that it's really useful if you want to be an honest supporter of Trump's policies. Just Google one of these stories we're talking about. The one we added to the list today, because I just heard about it, and I think Margie too. This Narcisco Barranco works outside Santa Ana. He was grabbed outside an IHOP on Saturday by masked men. Frightened, he began to run. And of course, what the ICE people said is that he attacked them. The video suggests he didn't attack them at all. He was scared, as any of us would be, if masked people try to grab us. And I repeat, his three sons, two are currently in the Marines. One did serve in the Marines. He has committed no crimes. He's been a law-abiding, tax-paying person here for,
since the 1990s. Yeah, I think it was the 1990s, yeah. Here's from Shawnee. I live in Pasadena, where we're still recovering from the Eaton fire. My 7-year-old soccer season was canceled because of the ICE raids. The next morning, right when he would have been playing, they raided the park where he would have been playing. And then one of my friends, this is a different text, has been here for 30 years, has a green card along with her husband, who has a green card, and 2 children. Went to an appointment for her husband to progress toward his citizenship. They took him into detention because they didn't believe they were a real couple, and also mentioned his speeding in a car from over 20 years ago. That's what's happening a lot too, is people going into courthouses or wherever they're supposed to meet with people about their applications for asylum or whatever it is, and they're getting arrested there. That's because Stephen Miller wants 3,000 people a day to be arrested and deported, and it hasn't happened yet.
So you are a big podcast person. You were the one that pointed out the Joe Rogan thing to all of us this morning. Does Rogan's position help change the 40 million people
I don't
listening
know.
to something?
I hope
Does that help
so.
change the whole dynamic here?
I don't know if he's going to keep talking about it, but yeah, I mean, like I said before, the guy is very talented. He's very entertaining. Lots of times he's not doing the research on some of the political things, so we can't rebut when people tell him lies. But he seems like a compassionate guy. Look what he said about this.
Well, obviously he has a lot of influence with people who are the bros in particular, would you not say? And he's taking a position that I think most people thought was Trump's position during the campaign. If they're criminals, particularly hardened criminals, get them the hell out. Everybody else, what is he arguing? Due process and fairness.
But I'm stunned by the Supreme Court. I mean, I'm stunned by the Supreme Court. 5 Catholics, 1 Christian. They're all. As we all know, they're all big religious people, and as we all know, what Jesus Christ would have done is send people to South Sudan to be tortured. So Caroline Leavitt wears her big cross around her neck. Today, we can all say, she's a wonderful stand-up person. I mean, these people. What a nerve.
Well, Pam Bondi also. That court basically said she's lying about Kilmar Brega Garcia.
She's wearing the cross all the time, too. Yeah. So I'm not sure what is the message that they're trying to say, that they're somehow holier than everybody else. It doesn't quite work that way. Anyway, coming up after this quick break, we're going to start to CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, via Zoom. We're going to talk to him about the Iran-Israel situation. Is there a ceasefire? Is it holding? And, of course, what's going to happen to the so-called, what Trump calls the big, beautiful bill, the major sticking points? Will it be passed by July 7th? Probably July 4th, rather. Probably not. But we'll see what John thinks. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In Barcelona, protesters have taken to the streets to spray tourists with water pistols. Their message, go home.
The over-tourism here is pushing up prices for locals. Our salaries, he says, can't keep up with skyrocketing housing and food prices.
That story and more global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
Welcome back to BPR and NEPM and GBH. Margery Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. 12:45 today, United States Senator Ed Markey will zoom in to talk to us about the state of the proposal to defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. 11 and 12 tomorrow here at the library. The governor, Maura Healey, will join us for an hour of Ask the Governor. But now we're joined on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, behind the Great Reporting Project, all over the map. Hello, John King.
Happy Tuesday. How we doing?
Good to see you.
John King, great to talk to you. So we don't know. We hope that there is going to be a ceasefire. The president announced there was going to be a ceasefire, which is pretty incredible that he could do that this fast. But there seems to be some question about whether it's real, whether it's going to last. What do we know?
I think we have to wait and see. The president is very happy with this. The president heads off now to the NATO summit thinking that he did something that nobody thought would be possible, that he'd be able to unleash U.S. military might to support and build on the Israeli operation against Iran and then get this to stop within days, as opposed to having another forever war or a long, protracted war in the Middle East. But let's see what happens. And this is not an anti-Trump statement, but let's also be careful and a bit skeptical when he issues these clear black and white statements, whether that it's done and it's over. Let's hope that's the case. We'll see in the hours ahead. And let's also see if it shifts. Sometimes Iran clearly here wanted an off-ramp. It was being punished militarily, first by Israel, then by the United States. It wanted an off-ramp, but does that mean it will not try to use its proxies, which have been hurt a lot since October 7th. Does it try to do cyber attacks? So I think we need to wait and see what the next chapter is. At the moment, though, the president is saying, that they've inflicted significant, he says obliterated, again, I would be skeptical and wait, but it's significant military damage, significant damage on the Iranian nuclear program. And he says now that maybe we'll have at least a pause. There's not going to be peace between Israel and Iran, but let's watch. And the president, again, heads to NATO feeling pretty upbeat and confident that this is going to, A, set back the Iran nuclear program, and B, not lead to further hostilities. But the second part there, I'd be careful with.
Well, let's go to the first part, the obliteration thing. Here is Trump on his initial speech on Saturday night, Speech of the Nation, and the vice president later with Bret Baier on Fox News, both using that word. Here they are.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
We have to talk to Iran and, of course, to Israel about what the future holds, because while we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program.
John King, has any independent entity confirmed that there was total obliteration of the Iranian nuclear program?
No, and there may not be an independent entity that can do that. The International Atomic Energy Administration has some access to Iran, not right now. The Iranians are going to have, not only just potentially do we have to watch for, will there be more military reaction? Will there be cyber? Will there be terrorism? Will there be some other, kind of different kind of force reaction? But also, what is their receptiveness going to be to international inspectors coming in? There's an effort in the Iranian parliament, which is essentially a proxy for the Ayatollahs and the regime, to say, no, don't let the IAEA back in. We do know that even before this military strike, look, Iran has known for some time that if there were military action, either from Israel or the United States or both, they know the targets. They know the underground nuclear facilities. They have publicly announced that they have another one, even deeper into a mountain somewhere. The expectation of American intelligence analysts who are not on the Trump team now, who don't have to say obliterated or else make the boss mad, say they more than likely have some centrifuges they've moved elsewhere, some uranium enriched, not to nuclear grade level, but that can be enriched that way, that they've moved elsewhere. That does not mean that there was not a significant setback here for Iran to have their fully developed sites, their bigger sites, or at least many of their sites bombed and set back, to be humiliated, so that you don't have the air defenses to stop an attack like this. So I think it's undoubtedly a military success. I think terms like obliterated, let's just be careful about that. The Iranians know they're targeted, and they have a nuclear program because they have a deep scientific community and a deep military community that's been at this for some time. So the likelihood is they have something somewhere else. How big, how close, how operational? I don't know the answers to those questions.
We're talking to CNN's John King.
Well, I was surprised by CNN polling about this, because I think no matter how you feel about President Trump, you had to be impressed by this incredible military operation. We talked about this yesterday, 18 hours one way, 18 hours back, refueling en route, hitting all the targets. It was really an incredible performance by the United States military, but most people are against it, according to your polling.
Yeah, a majority of Americans, a clear majority of Americans, especially overwhelmingly Democrats, a majority of independents, and only about 40% of Republicans feel strongly that this was a good idea. It might be 44% or so. I don't have the numbers directly in front of me. I think that's in part based on expectations, because Trump campaigned that he was going to, end the forever war, so not get the United States in these. So those numbers are interesting to me, in that is the framework of voters heading into this. Let's see what those numbers look like if this ceasefire holds, and if you can say that, again, obliterated is going to be a Trump term. But if the independent analysis says you have significantly set back, significantly hurt and derailed the Iran nuclear program, what do the numbers show us in 2-3 weeks and a month? Do people think, okay, that I do think it's interesting. Look where he's going now into the NATO summit, right? Most of the leaders at NATO have been so harshly critical of Israel for what it's doing in Gaza, for what it's doing in the West Bank, and yet they have been either muted or even thankful for what Israel and now the United States have done in Iran. So the world sees Iran differently and sees Israel's actions in Iran, and then the United States follow-up actions in Iran differently than other conduct, because Iran is unquestionably a bad actor. That does not mean you bomb its facilities. That's not my call to make, right or wrong. But the tone of the world is very different. It'll be interesting to see if the public opinion here in the States with a lot of people who, either the Democrats who don't trust Trump on anything, and the Republicans and independents who might be center-right, who thought, wow, Trump's not going to do this. He campaigned, he wasn't going to do this. So let's see how it plays out.
Well, also, we're not factoring in how does it play out vis-a-vis retaliation.
Right.
And obviously that'll affect public opinion too. You know, John, every time I have to use the word even before Republicans here, are even some Republicans in Congress, I know they won't voice anything publicly with few exceptions, are they concerned that Trump said the other day, until she flipped, that his chief intelligence person, Tulsi Gabbard, has no idea what she's talking about, that she was wrong, and then obviously she then flipped, or that he's talking about regime change as a possibility while his top people, Hegseth, Rubio, are saying that's not our agenda? Does that concern them, or is it whatever Trump says, whenever he says it, is A-OK with us?
No, it does frustrate. You know, there are serious people in both parties. There are people in the Republican Party who very much support tough military action against Iran, who believe Iran is a bad actor, who believe, whether it's the support of terrorism around the world and especially in the Middle East region, threatening to close the Straits of Hormuz. Iran is a bad actor, but the consistency of information, the consistency of what they're being told, who can we trust, is certainly a huge issue. Because look, if you're talking about the serious national security Republicans who've been around for some time, they don't put much into the president's black and white statements. They don't put much into obliterate. They might understand it politically, what the president's trying to do, but that's not how they're going to base their next decision or their intelligence assessment. And so when the DNI says one thing, the defense secretary says something else, they do have a relationship, a lot of them, with Secretary of State Rubio, obviously, because he served with them, and most of them respect him. So that's where they mostly do now, do back channel to somebody like Rubio. Can you actually tell us what's true, as opposed to the circular debate among other senior Trump advisors?
One last thing that's Iran related, I guess. Here is what Trump had to say to reporters this morning about the potential ceasefire.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
I have to say, I've heard everything from him. I haven't heard that one. And so I know you can't read his mind, and you always say, don't ask me to go in the mind of someone. Is it just unbelievably crass, which is almost his middle name, or does it reflect what some people suggest, that this is a guy whose, I don't know, cognitive level should be looked at as closely as Republicans think that Joe Biden should have been looked at?
I can't answer that latter question. I don't have the medical expertise. I will say that the president is very fond of the F-bomb in private conversations. To have it come out in a public conversation, again, I've said this many times. I have a teenager, and I remember sitting at the kitchen table on King Street in Dorchester. This is not what I was told to look for and expect from an American president, whether that American president was a Democrat or a Republican. And so we're in a whole new world when it comes to the public communication, the tone, the crassness, as you said. That's foul language, and that's not presidential language the way I was raised. Are we heading into a brave new world? Is the next president going to do this? Is the F-bomb going to become common in our public discourse? I hope not.
I hope not.
Perhaps it is.
Oh, God.
So, John,
Jim
this may
thinks
be...
that's a good idea.
What?
You think that's a good idea?
No, I do not.
You've argued that a million times.
Not
He's
for the
changing his
President of
mind
the United
now
States.
because he's embarrassed because you're here, John.
I'm a little embarrassed in front of John. John, I don't know if you can comment on this. Steve Lynch, who's a congressman from Boston, was running to be the Democratic head, the Democratic leader of the House Oversight Committee, one of the most important positions in Congress. He was defeated this morning, 150 to 63, by a congressman from California, Robert Garcia. Lynch campaigned, according to the Globe, on his 24 years of congressional experience, who could shepherd investigations, etc. Garcia's 47. Lynch is 70. I don't know anything about the vote except to say there is this feeling that the Democratic Party needs younger faces in front of the American people. Is that likely what happened here, or is there more to it, do you think?
I do think that's part of it. There's a generational angst, especially among younger members. And there's also more liberal members from New York and, say, California. Congressman Lynch sometimes is with the liberals, sometimes he is not on certain issues.
Good point.
Sometimes, and look, if you're looking at the Democratic Party is in the minority of the House, but California delegation is the largest delegation too. So having votes in your back pocket from home can help in something like that.
Talking to John King.
John King, earlier we talked to listeners about the Supreme Court decision allowing President Trump to deport migrants not to the country they came from, but to third countries, including places like South Sudan, which is in the middle of a civil war. I was really stunned by the 6-3 decision, because I don't know that we expected that's what was going to happen to people, especially if they get sent to some detention place in one of these countries, and they said it was okay if there were places that they would likely be tortured.
To me, I'm not a legal expert, right? And I in this case, I'll confess up front. Normally, I read these decisions either the day they come out or soon after. I haven't had a chance to go through this one because of other things going on in life. I will. But to me, it's part of a broader conversation about presidential power and how far the Supreme Court, which we know, even before, even under Joe Biden, this Supreme Court was a court made up of members who in the past have talked about Congress has taken too much power away from the president. The president should have more executive authority. The American people vote for an executive. And so that's where I would put this. Again, we're going to have dozens of these, right? We already have many, whether it's about, the spending cuts, whether it's about immigration policy. There may be a challenge even again about, somebody may try to challenge the president's decision to launch military strikes without approval from Congress. So there's a giant tug of war about presidential power. And on this case, I get your point. I can understand someone out there who says, okay, maybe the president can deport people, but can you send them anywhere? Can it be that random? That seems pretty, send them to a place like South Sudan. I get the conversation about it. To me, it is part of a defining test of our time, is that this administration, on just about all across the spectrum of policy, is going to test the limits of presidential power. And in this case, they won one. And that a lot of people are saying, whoa, I didn't think they'd win this one. We're going to be through this for the entire Trump term, at least the first half of it, as they push and push and push.
So we're talking to John. I'm sorry,
Margaret. It allowed him, and they ignored the lower court's order. One of the district judges was, U.S. district judge was Brian Murphy, Massachusetts, here. And it kind of reminds me of the Russians sending people to Siberia and the Gulag. I mean, it's kind of, it's not what you think of the United States doing.
It'll be interesting as then these decisions get implemented, and you actually then have tangible results of these decisions.
Yeah.
Do these cases make their way back through the courts? Right. That's one of the things you walk up. But on the broad question of presidential power, the administration is winning. They're losing some of these decisions, and not all of them have made it up to the Supreme Court yet. They're losing some, but they're also winning a fair percentage of these decisions, giving them pretty strong, bold executive powers.
So, John King, the bill that is formally called the Big Beautiful Bill is sitting in the Senate. The commitment was it would get to Trump by July 4th, which I guess is unlikely, even though you could suggest otherwise. I was naive enough to think every time I read a story about a member of the House on the Republican side having an impossible problem with X or Y, that Speaker Johnson would never get the votes, and he actually had to reverse 2 votes to get to 214, 212. Same thing is happening in the Senate. Cuts aren't deep enough. The cuts are too deep in Medicaid, say individuals, too big a deficit, on and on and on like this. What's going on over there? What are the prospects for this bill, one, getting out, and then being in any shape where the House and the Senate, with fragile majorities, could ever agree on a final bill to send to Trump?
Well, I'm with you, and I'm skeptical about the timetable issue. Even just in the last 24 hours, and there'll be more of this today, the Senate parliamentarian has said no. The math doesn't work the way you're trying to do some of the things. The SNAP cuts, which we used to know as food stamps, that they can't do it the way they were going to do it. There have been a couple of these saying the Senate violates parliamentary rules, the so-called Byrd rule in the Senate. And so they have to go back and redo some of their own math and rewrite some of the language. So they're still having a hard time getting it through the United States Senate, and they're not there yet. And as they do that, you have House members seeing what is in play at the moment in the Senate. Again, they haven't voted on a final package, saying no. If that's what they pass, I'm a no. So I think we have to take this in 3 steps. The president just put on Truth Social on his flight across the Atlantic, no vacation, Congress prepared to stay in place until this is done. So he's trying to say you don't get your July 4th recess. And sometimes, we've said this before, the smell of jet fuel, the prospect of a beach or going home can force very interesting decisions, and people can go from a no to a yes pretty quickly in Washington. It's not so much principle, shall we say, but this is incredibly hard. So I don't even want to make jokes like that about it, in the sense that the president wants to get this. Leader Thune is trying to get it done. They have It's a giant math issue to do what they're trying to do with, and there are concerns about Medicare and Medicaid and other things in the Senate side, legitimate policy concerns from people. So we'll watch what the Senate does. Assume they get something done. Can they get it done by July 4th? Again, mark me down as skeptical. But even if they don't, if the threats from the president, the bullying from the president gets them to move faster, that's in some ways maybe a success because the Senate can be very slow. Then the question is, can he get the House? It's going to be a take it or leave it to the House. The Senate's going to pass this when it comes back. Can the president do it? Can he tell them, I'm sorry, I know you don't like this. Maybe I don't like some of it, but we need to pass this. I don't know the answer to that question. And I think they have nothing to do with each other, but they could in the end. To Marjorie's question about the Iranian public opinion polls, where is the president standing with the American people 2 or 3 weeks from now? If his approval rating is not in a great place right now. And so do House Republicans from bluish purple districts view him traditionally as a somewhat weak second-term president, and do they think they can vote no? Or do they see him as Trump? He'll bully me, he'll primary me, I'll be in trouble. Which Trump, right? How do they see Trump when they have to make this final vote? That's going to be the defining question, because the House majority is just simply too narrow. There's not going to be enough Republicans who like the bill or like the bill enough to vote for it. Some people who hate the bill are going to have to vote for it to get it done. Is the president powerful enough to force that vote? As of today, again, I'd be a little skeptical. That's, to me, the fascinating question. Where does he stand when this gets to the key vote day?
Can we put this in context, too? Why don't I pick a poll that is from the most conservative organization I can find? Fox News poll, 38% of registered voters support the bill, 59% oppose it. Independents, 22 support, 73 oppose. And among white men without a college degree, which I assume you'd agree, John, is the heart of Trump's base, only 43% support the bill and 53% oppose it. So at the end of the day, could a win be a loss 18 months from now?
Yes. And the question is, can the president get your Congressman Gabe Evans? You're from the Greeley, Colorado area. Yeah. You're one of the 5 or 6 New York Republicans who come from pretty competitive, even Harris won districts. You're Don Bacon from Omaha, Nebraska, the blue dot, right? The blue spot in Nebraska. Can he get those guys to vote for it in the end? Because they don't want to deal with the grief. They don't want to deal with a primary, even though they know they might lose their seats come the midterm elections. That is the fascinating question. The policy here matters. So I sometimes get reluctant to make it about politics, even though I'm a politics guy, because there are some giant policy changes in this bill that will affect just about every American. So I think when we finally see a real bill, we should focus on the policy. But you raised a great question, Jim. Will Republicans, out of loyalty to Trump or fear of Trump, vote yes on something in the end that they think might cost them their job and could cost them the House and possibly the Senate majority?
John, you're not just a politics guy, you're a Red Sox guy. You have 30 seconds. For or against the Devers trade? For or against?
I'm going to make Red Sox Nation mad and say I understand it, so kind of for. I wish they got more. You can't not tell your team you won't put on a glove. Be the highest paid player on the team and you won't put on a glove. They didn't handle the communication right, but in the end, he's an employee.
Explain that to people. He wouldn't play first base or third base or something like that. He wouldn't play any base. I don't follow it closely.
They handled the communication horribly. Yeah. But you cannot have it can't be. So I think it's best for both. I don't view it as a for or against question. Thank you for that, Jim. But I get it.
By the way, I hope you're watching the streaming to look at the stress on John King's face.
Okay.
When answering the toughest question of the day.
Yeah,
that was bad.
John, it's great to see.
Yeah, I love this.
John
King, thanks.
Thank you very much,
Talk to you next
John
week,
King.
John
King is chief national correspondent with CNN. He does a great reporting project all over the map where he goes out and interviews voters about their changing opinions or their changing back opinions, whatever. So the show continues here in Boston. For you listening on NEPM, thanks for tuning in. You can tune into the fabulous 413 starting at 3 this afternoon. Monty and Khalees, the Lichter and Levin Jewish Delicatessen in Northampton. They're going to close in on there. Up after the noon news, we're going to talk with Jim O'Connell and Derek Winbush from Boston Healthcare for the Homeless. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 on GBH and NEPM at the Boston Public Library.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Insurance coverage from healthcare experts for businesses, individuals, families, and retirees. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Learn more at mgbhp.org/everyday. From executive producer Bradley Cooper, a new documentary reveals America's caregiving crisis and highlights the struggles and triumphs of caregivers nationwide. Watch Caregiving tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Braude, head on Hour 2 of BPR Live from the Boston Public Library. Senator Ed Markey zooms in with a reaction to Iran and the latest on defunding efforts of PBS and NPR. But first, some good news. Across the decades, Boston Healthcare for the Homeless' Jim O'Connell has established a legacy of compassion and care among the homeless of Greater Boston. He's celebrating 40 years at the helm, and he joins us alongside his colleague, Derek Winbush, himself formerly homeless.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll get reaction to the Supreme Court's decision last week to uphold a ban on gender-affirming care in Tennessee, giving states broad powers to ban or regulate transgender medical care for minors. We'll talk with Jordina Shanks, CEO of Fenway Health, the largest provider of trans health care in New England, and trans rights activist Alejandra Caraballo. That's all next in the second hour of BPR and 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. On his way to the NATO summit in The Hague this morning, President Trump declined to say explicitly whether he's committed to defending his NATO allies, a central tenet of that alliance. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has more.
A reporter asked Trump on Air Force One whether he's committed to NATO's Article 5, the mutual defense clause in the alliance's treaty. It says an attack on one NATO member is considered an attack on all. Trump said,
"Depends on your definition. There's numerous definitions of Article 5. You know that, right? But I'm committed to being their friends. You know, I've become friends with many of those leaders, and I'm committed to helping them."
When asked, he later declined to clarify how he interprets Article 5. Trump also said he doesn't think the U.S. needs to increase its defense spending to a new target of 5% of GDP, which other NATO leaders are expected to agree to. That's even though Trump himself previously pushed for that increase. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News.
Federal investigators are meeting today to consider what caused a door plug panel to blow off a Boeing 737 MAX jet last year. NPR's Joel Rose reports the incident raised big questions about safety and quality control.
The NTSB has previously said that 4 bolts that were supposed to hold the door plug panel in place were missing when the Boeing 737 MAX jet was delivered to Alaska Airlines the previous year. But the board has not revealed exactly who was responsible. The board members are expected to vote on the probable cause of the incident. Boeing has since replaced its CEO and top managers of its 737 MAX line and has only recently returned to the production rate that it was planning before the door plug blowout. Joel Rose, NPR News, Washington.
The first named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season has formed. Tropical storm Andrea is out to sea with winds not even close to hurricane strength. Andrea is forecasted to weaken tonight and fall apart by tomorrow night. The heat wave bearing down on the southeast, midwest, and northeast will last through the week. It'll feel like 111 degrees in Raleigh, North Carolina today, and around 100 in New York City. People in some parts of the city are being asked to conserve energy. Robert Friedrich runs a co-op in Queens, which lost power.
We have a lot of seniors here who were just really sweating. They were upstairs. It was really very uncomfortable. It was really very dangerous.
Severe storms are also possible in the Northeast, the Great Lakes, and Plains. Today is New York's Democratic mayoral primary. 11 candidates are in the race. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Democratic Socialist State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani are frontrunners. You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. The heat is forecast to peak today in Massachusetts, and some people say they're feeling it as they ride public transportation in Boston. One MBTA rider says they had trouble keeping cool inside the Park Street station. Alex Borogrushetsky had one word to describe the heat underground while catching a ride on the Green Line earlier today.
Boiling. Yeah. Boiling. I mostly just wish that it would be cooler.
The T has set up fans inside stations and says crews are stationed across the system to assist riders in need. The agency says trains may be traveling more slowly than usual. That's to reduce heat-related stress on the tracks. The Celtics kicking off what's likely to be a summer of change. They're trading Drew Holiday to the Portland Trail Blazers for guard Anthony Simons and 2 second-round draft picks. GBH's Esteban Bustillo says more.
Holiday quickly became a fan favorite, and the defensive standout was a key part of the Celtics' 18th NBA title in 2024. But the 35-year-old is heading into his 17th season, whereas Simons, a good offensive player, just turned 26. The Holiday trade also helps the Celtics retool for a season without star forward Jason Tatum, who will miss significant time after tearing his Achilles in this year's playoffs. Fans shouldn't be surprised by more trades to come as the offseason plays out. Esteban Bustillos, GBH News.
Elsewhere in sports, the Sox going for a win against the Angels on the West Coast tonight. Very hot, very humid in Boston this afternoon. Clear skies tonight, lows in the 70s. A chance of thunderstorms and scattered showers tomorrow. Highs again in the 90s. Right now it's 94 in Boston. The heat index is 99.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
He's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you. And streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Senator Ed Markey is going to zoom in today at 12:45 to tell us what's going on in D.C. and also what's going on with funding for us at NPR and PBS. Tomorrow we're going to be back here at the Boston Public Library with Governor Maura Healey for another edition of Ask the Governor, taking our questions and yours. She'll be here between 11 and noon. Hello again, Jim.
I want to repeat what I said at 11. Even if you aren't crazy about the show, it's air-conditioned here.
It is
so
air-conditioned.
I would suggest if you
Very
need it,
nice.
come on down. Joined now at the library desk by Dr. Jim O'Connell, who for the last 40 years has served the region's most vulnerable populations through the nonprofit Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program. He's been doing this work 39 years longer than he committed to as a young doctor in the 80s. Today, Jim joins us along with Derek Winbush. Derek first came to be involved with the organization back in 2003. He's been a longtime advocate for the program. He now sits on their board of directors and their consumer advisory board. Jim, Derek, it's great to have you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I hate to repeat myself because I asked you this, Jim O'Connell, last time we talked to you. Probably was a previous anniversary. But tell people the story of how you started out there as a young physician, going to be there for a year, and now 40 years later. How'd that happen?
You know, I'm sensitive to this now, Marjorie, because I wasn't really a young physician. I was an old medical student.
Okay, an old medical student. Okay.
Who then became a new physician.
Okay.
But no, I was going to become an oncologist. I really was fascinated by end-of-life care and cancer care. And I was on my way to New York to do a fellowship, and my chief of medicine, who's Dr. John Potts, this amazing person, and Tom Durant, who was a doctor that many of you know from Dorchester, part of Mass General, called me into the office and said, there was a new program that the Mayor Flynn had just gotten for a 4-year program to take care of homeless people in Boston. They needed a doctor. Actually, it was the homeless people that got together with Mayor Flynn who insisted on a full-time doctor. And so I got, those questions are kind of rhetorical when it's your chief of medicine asking you, you know. So I said yes, but for a year, and he delayed my fellowship for a year. And it was, interestingly, it was just when we had this terrible outbreak of multi-drug tuberculosis in the shelters. AIDS was just coming to the shelters, and it was the hardest job I ever had for that first year. And then I said, can I have one more year? Would you delay my fellowship one more year? And then it just fell into stuff. So here
Still
I am.
There.
So Derek,
40 years down the line.
Older now.
Yeah.
How'd you first get involved with this incredible organization?
Through recruitment. There was a cab that was already organized, and they needed new members.
Consumer Advisory Board.
Consumer Advisory Board. And there was a guy living in my building, and he asked me if I've ever been homeless. What? So we talked, and I went and did an interview up at Boston Healthcare when we was on Walnut Ave.
Why did that appeal to you? Why did you want to be involved in this thing?
Because I needed to do something. I was housed, but I was on the edge, still doing negative things as far as to myself, using drugs and stuff like that. So I needed some purpose, and hopefully this was going to give me some purpose.
You know, we're obviously talking to Dr. Jim O'Connell and Derek Winbush. Could you explain, I assume people know, but for the few who don't, explain what you do every day at this organization, Jim.
Absolutely. So we were, I wish I could say that I do it as much as I used to do it, but what we do is we are a bunch of doctors and nurses and social workers who have been asked to, we work out of 2 hospitals, Boston Medical Center, Mass General, then we do the clinics in most of the shelters in town at Pine Street, and in the old days, Long Island Shelter. And what we do is get our direct care, our doctors and nurses out so they can deliver care right in the shelters with the goal of getting to them before they have to come to see us in the emergency rooms.
You know, almost every time I read an interview with you, including when Tracy Kidder from Western Mass wrote the book, I know you don't like to say it's about you, it's about the work, but about you and the work, rough sleepers, which is the term for homeless people that is mostly used in Britain, Great Britain, Dr. Jim O'Connell's urgent mission to bring healing to homeless people well, let me step back. Is there some fatigue around this issue? I worry every time we talk to Lydia Downey or you that people go from cause to cause. I mean, real people as opposed to those who do the wonderful work you do. Have we lost interest in the homeless problem in this country, this city, this state?
You know, I remember on Labor Day of 1991, I remember Isabel Wilkerson, who was reporting for the New York Times back then, wrote a thing about compassion fatigue among homeless programs. And it kind of set a theme. She hit a nerve that when you do this for a while, the recalcitrance of the problem, no matter what we do. Like, I think of this 40 years ago, we started doing this, and I thought homelessness would be all gone in 5 or 10 years, and it's arguably worse now than it was then. So on a big picture, I would say there is clearly, you know, a fatigue that comes from not solving the big problem. And what we've had to come to grips with in our program is that, you know, our job is really to take care of people, not necessarily to solve the problem, but we work with everybody like Lydia and all sorts of people around to try to fix the societal problem. But the day-to-day stuff, and I would look to Derek on this, the day-to-day job of taking care of people, who turn out to be pretty extraordinary once you get to know them and hear what they've been through, is surprisingly joyful. And I say joyful not in the like haha joy, but in the
use the word
inner
a lot.
joy.
Why?
And I think it's because we just begin to appreciate the relationship you have. And I'm a doctor, so I think of this, I'm laughing about this now. So I've been taking care of some people who've been on the streets for 40 years, and we still take care of them. And they know we're at the other end of a phone call. They know they can come into our McGinnis house, and we'll see them in the shelter or at home. So that's a pretty good job as a doctor and as a nurse or a social worker. So most of us find that job is fabulous. The problem is a national scourge and a disgrace.
Derek, you mentioned before that you had some drug problems, and Jim was mentioning that there's a lot of people that are there and they're homeless now just because they can't pay the rent because the rent's become so expensive. But tell us, through your experience, what you've learned that people may not understand about being homeless. What does it mean?
The one thing that I can think of is the fact that I'm a human being. I'm somebody's son, I'm somebody's father, somebody's brother. And there was a time where I just didn't know how to ask for help. And you have people like Jim and others that you can trust. After you start seeing them for a while, you start trusting them. And subliminally, you're asking for help. And then one day that epiphany comes that you said, I'm ready. And there's people there.
And how did that happen? How did you come to be homeless, and how did you get in touch with Boston Healthcare for the Homeless?
A real short story. Using drugs, got out of prison, got diagnosed HIV positive, and I was running from myself. It got to a point where I was just hungry, I was angry, I was lonely, I was tired. But I was scared, and I just wanted something better for myself.
And how did you know about them? How did you know about what Dr. O'Connell does?
There was always rumors out there, but like I said, there was a recruitment from a guy from my building.
Yep.
And he told me
that was the
about
big thing.
program.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, Jim O'Connell, Mayor Wu has told us, I think the number she picked has said there's $48 million of federal money allegedly targeted to what homeless issues that's at risk with the Trump administration. That's virtually all we talk about is what's at risk in the Trump administration. Are there direct or indirect impacts of federal withdrawal from caring for real people that could affect the work you do?
Yeah, we lose sleep over this, as you can imagine. But, first of all, I think, the opioid epidemic and then COVID coming threw a whole bunch of ringers into us. And then these executive orders have been pretty difficult. The threat that he will take away our money if we continue to take care of different groups that have been excluded, pretty much. And then I suppose what we're worried about mostly now, which will have a huge impact on all of us, is if Congress passes these Medicaid cuts, it's going to be devastating for programs like us because we have a bunch of people. We have about 600 people working with us. Our budget is 75% Medicaid dollars that our doctors and nurses do. If they take that away, we'll be out of business.
By the way, that's that $800 billion for those who are calling their legislators in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill that we were just talking to John King about.
When you say, Jim O'Connell, that they don't want you treating certain people, who are they talking about?
Well, the executive orders are pretty clear that they do not want any of the federally funded programs like ours take care of anything that has to do with gender care. And even we're not allowed to technically take care of immigrants. And we have, we do the care in all the family shelters where there are lots of immigrant families whose kids need a lot of care.
Yeah.
And the thought of, that's who we are. The thought of stopping that is kind of frightening, to say the least.
So how much at risk are you? How dangerous is all this for what you do?
I think the risk is real. I sit on a board of a bigger corporation of supportive housing, and they lost $27 million overnight because they were doing things they were not supposed to. So the risk hangs over. There's a temporary restraining order now, so we don't know really what's going to happen.
Have you changed anything that you do?
We have not changed anything that we do.
Good.
If I'm really honest, though, I'd say we don't talk about what we do anymore.
Okay, I won't ask anyone. So Derek, one of my pet peeves in the world are consumer advisory boards. Let me finish the sentence. Because organizations often create them and then stick them in the back closet and then don't give a damn about what they say, but then whenever it's convenient to say, oh, we spoke to our consumer advisory board. With him here, do the leaders of this organization listen to what the consumer advisory board has to say?
Do you want me to leave now? Should I leave now?
No, I'm serious.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For example, give me an example of something that you and your colleagues cared about that happened within the organization.
Well, when we first moved to 780 Albany Street, our new building, there was a lot of clinicians and doctors that didn't want patients to allow them to smoke upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to get them into our respite program and get them some help if they couldn't smoke their cigarettes. So our cab sat down, we went over everything we needed to go over back and forth. We sent it to the board of directors, and folks like Jim went along with it also. So we do have a place for folks to smoke there called the Serenity Deck.
I like that. The Serenity Deck. I love that name. I love that name. You got quite a resume here. I was reading all the stuff you're doing, Derek, and one of the things you're doing is giving a lot of talks and been on a lot of panels to these different organizations around the country. So when you go give a talk, what do you talk about? What do you tell people? What do you think is important for them to know?
What is important for them to know?
Yeah.
I think what I do first and foremost for myself is therapeutic. It allows me to get some of that stuff that I need to get off.
Yeah.
But I give folks hope.
That you can...
Yes.
Yeah.
My number one priority for our program is to save lives. So if I'm speaking and I can save a life, then that's... Keep it simple.
And when you were having problems with drugs and you became homeless, where was your... Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Where was your family? And your friends. I mean, how did you lose a place to be?
I didn't want them to know.
You didn't want them
to know.
So
I was ghost. I was the one that was hiding and doing different things. I didn't want them to know.
Yeah. And did they find out where you were?
They did, but there was also the fear of the unknown because I had a lot of medical stuff going on.
Yep.
My mother was scared. I was scared, so I tried to hide, just do my own thing, and it worked for me.
Can I tell you, I got to spend more time with you. I need a little hope in my body here, and I think you could help me get there.
Absolutely.
You know, we're, again, Dr. Jim O'Connell, founder and leader of Boston Healthcare for the Homeless. And by the way, the website, if you want more information, want to contribute, bhchp.org, Boston Healthcare for the Homeless Program. .org. You know, Lydia Downey's here pretty regularly. And by the way, when the book came out, Tracy Kidder's book, I don't know if it was in the book, I can't remember, or the Shirley Young interview, or the one that you and Tracy did with us. You talked about you thought the single most important thing to combat homelessness was high quality education, which I thought was great. But in the interim, one of the things she's doing, which I know we're both wildly impressed with, is this supportive housing thing. Where are you? I assume this is really important to you too. How big a deal is this?
Oh, it's a huge deal to us in that as we take care of people who are on the streets, as Derek would say, you realize that you can deliver okay health care, you know, as long as you've got all the stuff in place. But once somebody gets into a house or a place they can live, then all things are possible. So without housing, we'll never.
But the supportive part of this is such an important, it seems to me, part of the formula, right?
Yeah, no, and it is. What we've learned, and Derek would confirm this for you, is, you know, if you've been on the streets for a long time or in the shelters and you all of a sudden cross the threshold into a place, it's magic. But at the same time, then you're faced with all the demons that it pushed you to the streets in the first place. Yeah. And you're alone. You're very lonely. You've lost your community, which was outside. So the support that comes with housing, as Lydia would be the first to say and is really a champion of, is that you just have to make sure people are taken care of while they're in there. And alone, and Derek would confirm this for you, people tend to they're so alone, they get depressed, and it's really difficult. Agree with me, Derek?
Yes.
You know,
you hit it right on our nose.
You mentioned when we spoke with you before, Jim O'Connell, that education is what you think is the big key to preventing homelessness. So what are you talking about?
What stunned me when I first started doing this, because I started doing this, I said I knew nothing about homelessness. And everything we did was because this group of homeless people got together with Mayor Flynn and said, here's what we want. But as I started taking care of people, most of my clinical life is on the streets now. I used to do a lot of shelter, mostly on the streets. Do you know a quarter of the people, of the men living on the streets of Boston can't read or write? And you start to realize there's a lot going on here. It's not just not a job. It's not just something. It's usually horrible neglect or abuse or something as a child. And many of them have simple learning disorders that no one in the schools had time to address. So you realize that if you want to stop homelessness, end it, you really have to get to the schools, I think, and make sure kids are taken care of. I would pay teachers $100,000 or $200,000 a year if I were God and could run the world. But I think we would end homelessness over time.
I think I know what the answer to this is, but for both of you, what does helping other people do for you as an individual, Derek? What does it mean? I don't mean in the abstract. I mean in a really visceral, internal kind of way. What does it do for you?
I see the miracles. It reminds me of remember when for myself. I'm a miracle. I see that. I see it.
How about you, Jim O'Connell?
Well, you know, I've got to brag on Derek for a minute.
Please,
so I've listened to Derek now. He spoke at the Harvard Advanced Leadership Institute the last 2 years. He just got the award as the, he helps do the National Consumer Advisory Board, which we have around the country, and he's led that. He just got the award as the consumer. And then I have to always remember when I'm saying this, that he's my boss. He hires and fires me, right? So I would say when I listen to Derek speak to audiences, his story just paralyzes everybody and makes them see that this is much more complicated than what you walk by on the street. And it's noticing people and understanding they have a very complicated story that really makes a difference.
You know, we had a beautiful call in the first hour when we were talking to listeners about why they thought that Americans were, of all the Trump policies, they were most supportive of what we consider to be the cruelest policies, what they've done to undocumented people, because they've convinced enough Americans that those undocumented people are less than human. And it seems to me that that's part of the thing here, Derek, don't you think? Is that people decide, they're not like us. Is that not what part of the problem has been historically?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But once you get to know them, and like Jim said, you get to hear their stories.
Yeah.
Human beings. They're just human beings.
Are you like this when you're not with a microphone? Are you like this in the real world? You are?
I am. I am.
This is really...
It's a transformation. It took a long time, but I love where I'm at today.
Well, you guys are doing as important a bunch of work as anybody on the planet is doing, and so it's thrilled to see you both.
I just want to quickly read this text from Peter. Dr. O'Connell has changed my life. I never thought I could change at age 86, but his story has done that. That's, I don't know Peter's last name, but that was Peter on the text. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming.
Good to meet you, Derek. Great to see you, Jim. Thank you so much.
We have been speaking with Jim O'Connell and Derek Winbush of Boston
Happy
Healthcare
40th.
for the Homeless.
Yep.
Yes, thank you so much for coming in. Coming up after this quick break, the Supreme Court has upheld a Tennessee ban on gender-affirming care for minors. We'll talk with civil rights attorney Alejandra Caraballo and Jordina Shanks, CEO of Fenway Health, home to the trans health program, of what this means for people seeking health care around the country. You're listening to Boston Public Radio at 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted, local news.
1 in 3 households here in Massachusetts are facing food insecurity.
GBH News.
Southwick Zoo is celebrating the birth of 3 healthy cheetah cubs. The bird helps secure the future of the species.
Here for what matters to you.
The Green Mountain National Forest in Vermont has approved a controversial plan to manage some 72,000 acres of land.
GBH 89.7, online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, a garden destination 50 miles from Boston. Visitors can discover summer with thousands of blooms, twilight experiences, art exhibitions, and educational programs for all ages. nebg.org. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we're back at the library with Governor Maura Healey. She'll join us for an hour for Ask the Governor, 11 to 12. And in about 20 minutes, Senator Markey will zoom in to tell us how well the effort to defund public broadcasting is going in the United States Senate. Last week, the Supreme Court, another incredible decision, upheld a Tennessee law restricting gender-affirming health care for transgender minors, paving the way for other states to ban treatment. It is not a full nationwide ban, at least not yet, but does permit states to ban it individually should they choose. So what does the ruling mean for states like Massachusetts? What does it mean for some of the most vulnerable people in our country? Is there more to come on these issues from the Supreme Court? We're joined now by Jordina Shanks. She's the CEO of Fenway Health, providing health care as a right, not a privilege, centering members of the LGBTQ community. They're the largest provider of trans health care in New England. Great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Also joining again is Alejandra Caraballo. She's a clinical instructor at Harvard Law School's Cyber Law Clinic, former staff attorney for the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, and an activist for LGBTQ rights. Alejandra, it's great to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. You know, it's a weird situation. You've got a lot of conservatives trying to ban certain books and have parents decide what the kids can read in school and what the courses they can take in school. But the parents, I guess, can't decide what the health care their children should receive. So what did you think of what the Supreme Court did, Jordina?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And first and foremost, I want Fenway Health patients and the community to know, particularly trans and gender diverse folks, that their care will continue at Fenway Health. Their care will continue. We provide care to over 33,000 patients every year. We provide care to 6,000 patients who identify as transgender or gender diverse, and we see patients from 41 different states.
Wow.
Folks come to us from other states where this care has already been banned, and we are fully committed to continue that care.
Aren't you worried about it being overwhelmed by people coming from the 20-some states whose bans are now permissible?
We've been anticipating this and preparing for it. We have the access, we have the capacity, and we continue to build the capacity.
Jordina, I just wonder what they do. Do people come here and stay with friends, or do they stay in a hotel and go back and forth, or move here, or all sorts of different things?
Many different options for our patients who come here from out of state. We are well situated and resourced. We have resources to support folks who come here from out of state.
Jordina, I want to stay with you for 1 second before we get to the legal end of this thing. On the issue itself, this is not a bunch of lawyers, with all due respect. These are medical professionals. Virtually every major medical association, which are generally very cautious about saying anything publicly, who say that this kind of gender-affirming care is medically necessary.
Absolutely, it's life-saving.
Well, flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah, it's life-saving care that folks need, our trans youth and adults alike. And this is a decision that totally undermines parents, families, patients, and their doctors' ability to make healthcare decisions for essential healthcare for themselves.
So how consequential both on the issue itself, how big a deal is this Supreme Court decision? I assume 6-3, was this, like everything is 6-3. How big a deal was this?
It's a pretty big deal. It's not the worst case scenario that could have happened. The 3 justices in a separate concurrence by Justice Amy Coney Bryant kind of went on a separate one and said that basically trans people could never merit heightened scrutiny protections under the Constitution. This one just kind of said, this isn't discrimination per se. This is essentially just targeting a medical diagnosis, and then on the basis of age. But even on the medical diagnosis portion or treatment under gender dysphoria, this precedent could basically be used to ban care for adults, to target care for adults. Florida has already severely restricted care for adults there, and we could see follow-on bills next year severely restricting access.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm right, I didn't even know about this till this morning. We were talking about, and again, this is the formal name, the Big Beautiful Bill, which is none of it's big, but it's not anything else. My understanding is contained in this bill is a ban on using Medicaid funds, not just for minors, but for adults as well, on gender-affirming care?
Yeah, it would be a ban on Medicaid and Medicare. And so essentially they could not use any Medicaid or Medicare funding for gender-affirming care. Now, there is a potential backstop. The states can self-fund it on their end, since Medicaid is a state-administered program. But for probably the vast majority of the country, most trans people would lose access to health care. And clinics like Fenway are around the country are usually dependent a lot on Medicaid funding. And so this could restrict access across the country in places where they don't have as much support from the state, and like Massachusetts has done.
Alejandra, talk about teenagers. You wrote a great piece about this, talking about, it's very self-conscious age to begin with. You want to go through get the puberty blockers, get the hormones that will enable you to grow into the person that you want to be. How difficult that is when you take that option away from a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old or 16-year-old.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is the government coming in and telling vulnerable children that basically they can't be who they are, and at the threat of their doctors being thrown in jail. Like, that's what fundamentally this is about. This is about bodily autonomy and also the rights of parents to decide the medical choices of their own children. This is telling parents that they can't decide for their own family what medical care their children can get.
Yeah.
Jordina, one of the things I try to bring into these conversations about some of the things the Trump people are doing is the fear aspect of this. While this decision I understand it politically, I don't understand it as a legal or moral matter. There's an all-on assault, as we know, whether it's trans people in the military, getting rid of this special number on the 988 hotline because of the distinct mental health issues that trans people may. How do you deal with with the fear component? Even if you're not directly affected by one of these particular things, they're coming for you. I mean, in the grandest of terms. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, we provide care to all underserved communities, and quite frankly, all of the patients and communities we provide care to are under attack right now. We are keeping our
Doesn't that
people-
affect their health, that in and of itself, even if there's not direct impact?
100%. We're seeing higher acuity and mental health illness. We are keeping our folks informed. We are pulling the community together. We are collaborating with community organizations. We are fortunate here in the state that we have strong allies in our elected officials who are fighting for our rights, protecting our rights for our patients, for providers. And we are reminding our folks that they are not alone, that we are here, we are not giving up, we are going to get creative, we are not going to leave any stone unturned to be able to continue to provide the care that they deserve.
You know, Alejandra, I'm sure you read the New York Times piece that was endless this weekend with a quote from somebody who claims to be a trans advocate, saying it's one of the biggest mistakes in the history of trans activism. And the basic thrust, correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of those who have that position, is just a couple of years was the Bostock case, which said essentially, in terms of workplace issues, you can't discriminate against trans people. Naive people like me thought, oh my God, they finally have a human bone. They're going to expand this kind of thing. Isn't Bostock and other kinds of issues that could arise at risk in light of this decision? How do you say this? Scrimetti?
Scrimetti.
Yeah. Aren't all those things at risk?
Yeah, in some ways, the Supreme Court basically handed a roadmap to discriminate against trans people by using the pretext of gender dysphoria. And I think the biggest casualty of this will be the trans people serving in the military. Essentially, they can just say, we're going to ban anyone with gender dysphoria from serving in the military. We're not doing it against trans people. We're doing it against people with gender dysphoria. And I think that really is the biggest risk of the biggest loophole created by this, is that somehow by discriminating against a medical condition that only trans people have, it's not discriminatory against trans people. It's ludicrous.
Explain gender dysphoria, what that means, so people know.
So gender dysphoria is basically the deep feeling of unease or discomfort with your gender identity consistent with, or that's inconsistent with your sex assigned at birth. And so essentially, if you're assigned male at birth and you feel deep unease with that, that's essentially what gender dysphoria is.
Okay. And Jim alluded to this, but the idea of taking away the suicide hotline, it's just cruel and heartless is the only thing you can think of, because there's endless information and data that shows that kids, LGBTQ kids, trans kids have more rates of suicide. So, I don't know what you tell these kids or these parents. It's like there is a target on everybody's back.
Yeah, I think we remind them that we are here no matter what. We will continue to build bridges, build resources with other community organizations, not just here locally, but across the country, to make sure that they get the services and care they need. I think we have to remember also that trans folks are combating discrimination in housing, in employment. And so when folks are needing to figure out where they're going to sleep next, or where their next meal is coming from, or how they're going to take care of themselves, the last thing they think about is their health care. So at Fenway, we have resources and collaboration with other community organizations to get folks connected to the services they need to be healthy.
Alejandra, one of the many things that drives me nuts that we encounter on the show is whenever we discuss trans issues, there are people who call and say that's why Democrats lost the presidency, because they spoke so much about trans issues. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I'm pretty sure the Trump campaign spent a couple $100 million on the infamous Kamala Harris cares for they, them, Donald Trump cares for you. Democrats weren't exactly out campaigning for trans rights. It was just, and I use the term intentionally, the brilliant strategic decision to bludgeon Kamala Harris and other Democrats with that ad and that campaign. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely the issue, is that Republicans have this asymmetry where they can unilaterally focus only talking about trans people, but somehow it's Democrats that are painted as the ones that are obsessed with trans people. Kamala Harris didn't even utter the word trans the entire campaign. None of her policy platforms even included anything dealing with trans people, and yet she was perceived as obsessing over trans people to the exclusion of other issues such as kitchen table issues. And it's one that's it's always just crazy to me how that works out.
Can I read a quick text? Anonymous texter, my daughter is trans, moved to Massachusetts from Tennessee 5 years ago. So grateful to be in a safer, more supportive environment. Thanks for your show.
You know, speaking of politics, I listened to this long podcast and read it. Ezra Klein did. Maybe you heard it. Sarah McBride, the congresswoman who's trans, has put up with unbelievable grief down in Washington. But she was talking about the whole politics of this and maybe trans movement moving faster than like the gay rights movement thing. And one of the things you see in polls, dramatic in polls or anecdotally, people who would say, well, I'm fine with trans rates, I'm fine with trans people in the military. But when it comes to girls' sports or women's sports in college, it's like, forget about it. I mean, and it sticks with people. And I think the polls are like 70 or 80% of Americans do not like this idea. So how do you get over that? Because whether it's Republicans mentioning it, which is constantly, or not, that's one that's tough for people.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's constantly pushed in their face. I mean, you end up in situations where some random track meet in California suddenly has like national news descending on it. And to put this in perspective, the NCAA had 500,000 athletes last year. Less than 10 were transgender. This is a complete non-issue, but the way that they spend tens and tens of millions of dollars pushing this and promoting it and putting it on every major platform makes it seem like this is some major issue because they know this is kind of the way that they can introduce their framing and to put Democrats on the defensive. And here's the thing, like people like Sarah McBride say, well, we need to like acknowledge that like this is a losing issue. Democrats in states across the country have tried to say, okay, we're going to work on a compromise here. We're going to like put some restrictions here, and we're going to let this go. And then what happened the next year? They came in and banned healthcare. Then they came in and put book bans. And so this idea that if somehow you capitulate and you give up on this one issue so that it becomes a non-issue, it doesn't work because then they just come back for more. And so I think like that's the difficult choice to be made is that look, there is no compromising with people who fundamentally don't want trans people to exist.
Well, the irony is, if the trans girls could get the puberty blockers from the hormones when they were young enough, so they wouldn't, grow up to have more male characteristics, there wouldn't be such a big issue. But that's been taken away, so it's like a no-win situation.
Yeah, I mean, California was a perfect example of this. They came up with a compromise where even if the trans girl would win, the cis girl would also get the first place trophy. And so basically they were saying, like, we understand this is about fairness and inclusion. And the Trump administration then threatened to defund the entire state of California education system over that, even though they did come up with this compromise. So that's what I'm trying to say is, like, look, I understand, like, a year or 2 years of hormone therapy or other kinds of checks, like, let's see what we can figure out. I don't think that's a problem. The issue is that the other side is not interested in compromise.
Well, the other thing I found was sort of ironic as well is if you are a boy and you decide for whatever reason you want to get testosterone treatments as an adolescent because of your growth spurt or something like that, you can get it. But you can't get it if you are a trans person. That's sort of odd as well.
Jordina, I think I broached this with Alejandra, but I'm going to broach it with you. I want to end on a hopeful note, at least from my perspective. I mention all the time Sue O'Connell, who's a regular guest here. We discussed a poll in the New York Times about 15 years ago on same-sex marriage, where like 30% of America supported it. Now it's 70%. And the only two demographics that supported it were young people, who always support tolerance, and people who said they knew a gay or lesbian person. My hope is that the same thing will happen with trans people, is once people realize my next door neighbor, my coworker, the kid teaching, do you subscribe to that?
100%.
Is that wild hope or is that real?
100%. This is all stemming from fear and when folks get to really know their neighbors, their friends, folks who carry different identities and really take the time to get to know them, they see the humanity in them and the shared values that we hold.
I hope that's true. It's good to see you. Oh, by the way, before you go, 15 seconds, we'll talk to you about it next time you're here. What's the the Dissident
Yes.
that you're involved in quickly.
Yes, I launched a new newsletter called The Dissident.news. It's basically focused on being anti-authoritarianism on the intersection of technology and LGBTQ rights.
The Dissident.news.
Yes.
We'll go into it in greater depth next time we see you.
Thank you.
Great to have you both.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
very
much.
much
Appreciate
for coming in. Good luck with everything. We have been speaking with Fenway Health CEO Jordina Shanks and Alejandra Caraballo, lawyer and clinical instructor at Harvard Law's Cyber Law Clinic and an LGBT rights activist. You can follow her on Blue Sky at squeer.net, that's esqueer.net, or read her writing in the column she just talked about, published in the Dissident.news. Thank you both for coming in. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk with Senator Ed Markey. He's going to join us on the funding for PBS and NPR, plus on the Iran-Israel ceasefire. Is it going to last? You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's been 3 years since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Since then, doctors have become more supportive of self-managed abortion with pills.
Now the healthcare profession is saying, wait, does that person really need to come in to do that ultrasound? Lo and behold, there's all this evidence already out there that no, they don't.
That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Dean in Hamilton with Compass Real Estate. Their website includes listings of homes from Hingham to Duxbury, as well as information about each South Shore community. More about the team and current listings at deanandhamilton.com. And the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, commemorating 250 years of history, independence, and innovation since the American Revolution. Learn more at massachusetts250.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we're back at the library. The governor joins us for an hour from 11 to noon. Governor Maura Healey, 11 to noon for Ask the Governor. We're now joined on Zoom by Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey. Senator, thanks for making time. We appreciate it.
Well, great to be with you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for Senator Markey for being with us. So we're, I think, like 24 days away from this deadline on the vote on what's going to happen with NPR and PBS. So where do you think the situation is at?
Great question. I'm lobbying my Senate colleagues, Republicans, on a daily basis. Obviously, they are in the rural states, whether it be Alaska or Maine or the Dakotas. They are disproportionate beneficiaries of public broadcasting spending. It's a huge issue for us to have to deal with, and ultimately we're going to try to create an atmosphere where those rural state Republicans come to understand that it's their constituents who get the emergency information, the news, the entertainment, the farm stories, the lumber stories that are absolutely essential to them. And the further away you get from the central cities in rural America, is the more dependent the rest of the population becomes upon the public broadcasting system, NPR and PBS. So that's where I am. I'm working very, very hard. My hope is that before we have that vote, and again, as you're saying, the deadline is July 18th for the conclusion of that whole rescission process. So it won't most likely be this week because we're going to be debating the reconciliation bill on the floor of the United States Senate. But it just requires a lot of calls, a lot of constituents in the rural parts of America who love NPR, who love PBS, calling into their senators and just telling them to please keep their hands off of this invaluable service.
You know, we're talking to Senator Ed Markey. I love that you call it the reconciliation bill as opposed to us losers who call it the big, beautiful bill, which it isn't, except big. So congratulations on that. You want to understand, Senator, you make the case, and when our boss, Susan Goldberg, was here the other day, when the heads of BPR and PBS testified in front of Congress, while we would suffer as a big institution, it would be more on the margins. Some important shows would be cut back, that sort of thing. These rural communities, some of them only have PBS and NPR. So in the past, that's what kept the programs alive, despite a lot of Republican presidents proposing its dissolution. Is the reason it has a chance now because your fellow Republicans are so scared of Donald Trump that they're willing to sell out the interests of their constituents back home?
Well, ultimately, Congress is a stimulus response institution, and there's nothing more stimulating than hundreds and thousands of constituents calling in, just saying this service is vital. By the way, that's what's happening on rural hospitals right now. My study that I released a week ago shows that 338 rural hospitals in America are in jeopardy of going out of business if the Medicaid cuts, which the Republicans are proposing, goes into place. Well, the same thing is true for the public broadcasting system, NPR. In the same way that if you go to the television section of the Boston Globe today, you can see from 7 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, it's the Children's Television Network. And by the way, the same thing is true in South Dakota and in Alaska and in every other rural state in our country. So they're no different than us. And the parents who are dependent upon putting their children in front of the screen so they can see all this wonderful programming are no less motivated than the parents in Boston. So we have a chance to have a response that comes from the localities across the country to continue to pressure. And I actually think the longer this goes on is the better chance is because you can tell this story that, as you're saying, the very viability of these stations is in jeopardy, as opposed to the larger cities that aren't as dependent. So that is my hope. And we have a real sense here that education of children, rural safety, emergency information is going to be a big part of our winning argument, if we can make a winning argument to these rural Republican senators.
You know, we're talking to Senator Ed Markey. You know, Senator, one of the things I worry about is some, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these Medicaid cuts, if they do go through, won't take effect till like 2028, or Trump will be long gone by then, and these Republicans will be long gone. So they'll blame the next person. The cuts won't be felt, at least some of them, until maybe a Democrat is.
It's Joe Biden's fault.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how much is that going to matter if people won't realize what's going to happen to their rural hospital, et cetera?
Well, that's not what the polling is saying. The public has already figured this out. They already know that they're going to be harmed by this. They have already figured out that it's a complete income transfer, and it comes from the bottom 60 percentile of our population, and it's transferred to the upper 1 percentile. So the public has figured it out. The polling is overwhelmingly negative in terms of Trump's bill, and we have been raising the alarm, and the alarm has been answered by the American people. Now, again, there could be, people's attention distracted over to other international or domestic issues. But when they're asked that central question about the impact of the bill on education, on healthcare, on supplemental nutrition, on all of these programs that people really love, the EPA, you name it, all the way down the line, wind and solar, all electric vehicles, the polling's overwhelmingly against them. So that's why actually Josh Hawley said it's political suicide to hurt Medicaid. So to the extent to which we have an opportunity to continue to make this argument, Republicans might be under great pressure from Donald Trump, but they're going to pay a big price back home. in terms of what their constituents are going to do to them. They've already figured out that they are the ones who are harmed. The stability of their hospitals are going to be jeopardized. The Affordable Care Act, Medicare, Medicaid are all looted in order to have this big tax break for the wealthiest people in our society. People do not like that. People know that Bezos and 2 or 3 of the other Zuckerberg and others control more wealth than the bottom 50% of our population combined. They already know that, and this is just a further transfer of the wealth into their hands. But it comes out of the health of ordinary families. It comes out of the education of ordinary families, the environmental protections for ordinary families, and it is a big-time losing argument for the Republicans.
When Ed Markey quotes Josh Hawley, you know we have a chance. Can I say one more second on PBS and NPR? Part of this bill, we've talked a lot about this, is George W. Bush was responsible for a program that most analysts say has saved 20+ million lives around the world. This AIDS, this PEPFAR program that historically, until Trump, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, was as bipartisan as anything was bipartisan in the Congress. And this is part of the rescission package that a Corporation for Public Broadcasting is in. Is it possible that PEPFAR helps drag NPR and PBS across the finish line, or no?
Well, again, that's part of the, I hate to say this, but the enmity that Donald Trump has towards George Bush and his brother, Jeb Bush, who he ran against. Yeah. So it's all part of this political, payback that is so much a part of his identity. But the implications for the world in terms of the number of people who contract HIV and ultimately AIDS is absolutely historically catastrophic. So my hope is that there are still some Republicans of conscience in their caucus over these next 4 or 5 or 6 days who will stand up for PEPFAR, who won't vote for a final bill that kills PEPFAR, and as a result, again, continues to illuminate what the impacts are on the health and education and well-being of not just our society, but the global society. Because anything that happens that undermines healthcare around the rest of the world ultimately will reverberate back to the United States. That's why we spend money in Africa, in Asia, in South America, on all of these diseases that through USAID or through PEPFAR, because we benefited from it as well. And we're just hoping that some of these Republicans will respond to that common sense but humane responsibility which the United States has, in fact, assumed for global health.
You know, we have almost no time, and I know you don't. We only have literally 40 seconds left. Very quickly, do you have any evidence that we totally obliterated, to use Vance and Trump's words, the nuclear capacity of Iran? Literally 30 seconds, Senator.
Well, we were supposed to be briefed today, the Senate, and now they've pushed it back to Thursday of this week. So in the absence of any conclusive evidence presented by the Trump administration, and most likely the inability to actually get into these facilities for some time because of the bombing, it's impossible to determine whether or not the totality of the uranium, for example, that's already been enriched, has been destroyed. We don't know the answer to that. Trump can make all the assertions which he wants, but until the International Atomic Energy Agency is in and confirming any of his assertions, he's in no position to contend that the program is totally obliterated.
Let me just say, you better win this fight on public broadcasting, or else Marjorie and I are going to be looking for jobs in Malden.
That's right.
So we know you have connections in Malden,
That's
so
right,
we
you
may
do.
call you if we need you.
Senator, thank you.
Believe me, there's nothing more important than keeping this information flow that comes from NPR, GBH radio, public radio in general, going for the American people. They love it, and it's essential
Thank you.
for democracy that we keep objective information in the political system. So thank
you.
Thank you.
Every day, I'm going to be fighting for
We know it.
the next
Senator, good to speak to you. Ed Markey,
Thank you
thank you
very
so much
much
for your time.
Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, 2 of Boston's best restaurants join us here at the library, not handpicked by Jim, but by Boston Magazine. We're going to hear about the best of Boston 2025 great restaurants and other great things. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The best way to support your GBH radio listening is by becoming a GBH sustainer. It takes just 2 minutes to enroll and a few dollars a month on your credit card. Small monthly contributions, huge impact. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village, now playing Rent, an unforgettable musical that changed Broadway. Tickets at capeplayhouse.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of BPR, live from the Boston Public Library. Kicking off the hour, we talk with 2 legendary Boston restaurateurs who made it onto Boston Magazine's Best of Boston list. Jason Santos for the Seaport Citrus and Salt, and Lydia Shire for Scampo on Beacon Hill. We'll also talk with the magazine's executive editor, Brittany Jasnoff, not just about the restaurants, but all the other best ofs.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Ben, you might not have noticed, Jim, but it is hot, potentially the single hottest day in recorded history for Boston. We'll end our Tuesday talking about your best cool-down tips, trading basement window AC units with your friends, visiting city splash pads, freezing your jeans, or, as I have recommended over the years, wetting the sheets, something people may think is gross, but it's really not. What are you doing to beat the heat? Call or text in the third hour of BPR and 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. President Trump is due to arrive at the NATO summit in The Hague soon. Alliance members are set to commit to boosting defense spending as Russia's war in Ukraine and conflicts in the Middle East persist. Israel says it carried out a limited strike in Iran today. That was after President Trump publicly warned Israel not to retaliate for Iranian missile fire. That occurred after a ceasefire had taken effect. Iran denied that missile fire took place. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv.
Hours into the ceasefire, President Trump issued a remarkable and rare public rebuke of Israel, calling on Israeli pilots to go home and not to bomb Iran. He told reporters he was not happy with Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office issued a timeline of events, saying Iran fired missiles at Israel after the ceasefire went into effect, causing no casualties or damage, and that in response, Israeli warplanes bombed an Iranian radar installation near Tehran. It said Trump and Netanyahu spoke and Israel held back from additional strikes. Despite Israel's limited strike, Trump wrote online that Israel would not attack Iran and that its planes would head home, and said the Israel-Iran ceasefire is in effect. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The U.S. Supreme Court says the Trump administration can continue to deport migrants to countries that are not their home nations. NPR's Tovia Smith reports the ruling overturns a lower court's decision.
The court did not explain its reasoning, but dissenting justices did, calling the order inexcusable. Attorney Anwin Hughes, who represented immigrants being sent to South Sudan, says thousands others may now have no chance to challenge deportations to countries where they risk torture, for example.
This administration, don't really show mature judgment or concern for human life. And so we're extremely concerned that this pattern can have devastating consequences.
Trump administration officials say, quote, activist judges are putting Americans at risk by blocking deportations of violent criminals. The Department of Homeland Security calls the order a victory, posting, fire up the deportation planes. Tovia Smith, NPR News, Boston.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell is on Capitol Hill talking about interest rates this afternoon. He says the central bank will continue to wait and see whether to cut its key rate.
The Federal Reserve remains squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Despite elevated uncertainty, the economy is in a solid position. The unemployment rate remains low, and the labor market is at or near maximum employment.
Powell says the Fed needs to learn more before adjusting rates. His position is at odds with President Trump's urging to reduce borrowing costs now. This is NPR News from Washington.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. Some MBTA riders are complaining about sweltering conditions inside stations today as the temperature tops 97 degrees in Boston. That's a new record for the state. GBH's Jeremy Siegel reports.
Walking down the steps of the Park Street station, you're immediately surrounded by hot, stale air. Fans are running, but for riders like Brockton resident Debbie Scott, it's not enough.
It's too hot. They need some more fans in here or something.
What would be your message to people in charge of the T and the facilities?
Come down here and try to take a train down here and see how hot it is down here for real.
The T says it has crews stationed across the system to help riders who might be struggling with the heat. The agency is warning the extreme temperatures could force them to run trains at lower speeds. Jeremy Siegel, GBH News.
A firefighter was treated for heat exhaustion early today as crews fought flames that tore through a unit at a condo complex in Framingham. Officials say they were treated and released at the Metro West Medical Center. No other injuries are reported. The residents got out safely. Officials say that unit was being renovated, and the fire was likely caused by the spontaneous combustion of oily rags. In sports, the Sox going for a win against the Angels on the West Coast tonight. That extreme heat warning remains in effect until 8 o'clock tonight. Clear skies overnight, lows in the 70s. A chance of thunderstorms and scattered showers tomorrow, highs in the 90s. Right now, 97 in Boston. The heat index is 103.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH.
Marjorie's mouth is full. If she sounds a little different than she ordinarily does, she has fried chicken in her mouth as she's speaking.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the shake, what is this called? Tahini shake?
Halva shake.
Halva shake?
Halva.
Halva, thank you.
Whatever it is.
I'm sorry, got you off track. Let's get
fantastic.
back. Okay,
That's
who
right.
are we again? Who's coming on the show tomorrow?
The governor's going to be here tomorrow. Maura Healey's going to be here for another edition of Ask the Governor from 11 to 12, taking our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
But she's not bringing any food.
She's not.
So Boston Magazine has done it again with its annual Best of Boston issue back for 2025, with winners in more than 250 categories, from restaurants, bars, salons, gyms, on. Notably missing from the list, obviously, is Best Radio Talk Show Host, but Marjorie is magnanimous enough to forgive them. That's one of us. Joining us now at the BPL is Boston Magazine Executive Editor Brittany Jasnoff. Brittany, it's great to see you.
Thanks
for being
having
here.
me.
She's brought along 2 of this year's Best of Boston restaurant winners. Jason Santos, you know him from TV's Hell's Kitchen. I can't wait to hear what that guy is like. And not this guy, but that guy. He's being recognized for citrus and salt, but he also owns Buttermilk and Bourbon, Butterbird, and others. And chef and restaurateur Will Gilson is being recognized for his newest thing. It is your newest thing, Amba, right? He's also the owner of Puritan Company, Puritan Oyster, Geppetto, on and on and on. Welcome to all 3 of you. It's great to have you. Really appreciate it.
Okay. So before we get to the great food, let's hear a little bit about, your handy guide to everything that is cool here, Best of in Boston. Tell us some of the categories that are in here and who are among your big winners.
Yeah, so we're so excited about this year. We have some great new winners. We have some tried and true businesses that have been in the issue many times before. We have over 250 winners this year, spanning restaurants, shopping, all different kinds of stuff. So, we're really excited about all the
And
different.
how do you pick them? Do you have little categories, the
Oh my
shopping
God.
category, the restaurant category?
It is not easy. I can tell you that. We spend the better part of the year, our writers and editors, testing and researching and doing all the things to figure out what is the best in
Do
Boston.
people try to pay you off? Tell the truth.
No.
Of course they do.
Well, I mean, they might
don't?
try, but they can't. No.
Is that really true?
Yeah, it's really true.
So if somebody buys a couple ads, they're not going to get a best of
Absolutely not. No,
Okay.
it is. We are independent.
So here's my thesis based on nothing, Will Gilson, but why not? Is when you're a new restaurateur, getting picked here is huge. When you're as established as the two of you guys are, is it a big deal? Does it matter that you get a best of Boston?
It is. I mean, it doesn't matter what we put out there onto the internet or you know, how hard we work, you know, to try to get larger audiences. Boston and the people who read Boston Magazine are the folks who ultimately, you know, help make these places really great and really busy.
So do you see a bump in your business?
certainly
You
do.
really do?
Yeah.
Jason, you're nodding in agreement. Same deal with you?
For me, Boston Magazine is like the most important thing. I do a lot of national stuff, and it doesn't really translate, but Boston Magazine, you win something with Boston Magazine, you're busy the next 6 months. And I remember being like a young cook, 23 years old, vying for, you know, to win something. So the fact that we won is pretty tremendous.
Like 10 years ago, we won Best Brunch at Puritan, and it went from being a public service to being like one of the busiest shifts of the week. And like that's the power that this award can have.
And you know, even just if you're walking by, if you just happen to be walking by and you see the thing in the window, Best of Boston, you know, from Boston Magazine, you think, okay, it's going to be a pretty great place. And people have them up there from like 15 or 20 years ago. They never let them out of the window, but it works,
Yeah,
right?
we've seen some old ones. 1997.
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Listen, we are an entire city of people that love their legacy. So, right,
That's
you know,
right.
that's why we've got Red Sox and Celtics and everything we've got. That's why you hold the Boston Magazine up there high.
Okay, so Jason, the most important thing about you is not the quality of your food and your great restaurants.
Appreciate
I
that.
read, here's the most important thing. You used to go to your grandparents' house and watch, what station did you watch and
I
who
used
was
to watch
on it?
PBS. I
There you
can
go.
100% say that's what got me into cooking.
And who'd you see on that screen?
It was like Julia Childs, Jacques Pepin, Yan Can Cook. I mean, I remember being 7 years old with a pen and paper writing down
Is that
recipes.
really true?
Swear to God.
So what was it that, as a kid?
So, I mean, as a kid, my parents got divorced, so my grandparents would pick me and my sister up for school. So we spent a lot of times. My mom was a paramedic. My dad was a Navy SEAL, so kind of crazy
Wow.
jobs. So I spent a lot of times with my grandmother, and she always had that station on. And I just remember, like, always wanting to cook. Like, I joked that I came out of the womb making aioli, because it's like the only thing that I've ever wanted to do. I've never wanted to do anything else, and
So
it really got me going.
So what were your little boy dishes that you tried to make? Do you remember anything you tried to make when you were a kid?
I remember my grandmother used to make, you know, they didn't cook a whole lot. They're Irish, you know, it's not so good. But I remember my grandmother used to make sauce all the time, like, you know, marinara sauce and gravy, whatever you want to call it. And when she would step out of the room, I would go over and tinker with all the spices. And she would come back and say, you know, why doesn't my tomato sauce taste like chili? Because I would dump a bottle of chili powder into it. But honestly, I just have always loved to cook.
How do you feel about the fact, Brittany went to BU, how do you feel about the fact Marjorie and I went to a dinner at BU, Marjorie sat next to Jacques Pepin and he hit on her. What do you think of that?
I was flattered.
I mean, he's only
was
human,
flattered.
right?
That's
He's only
right. I was
human.
flattered. You know, he is the most charming and wonderful and loving. Remember the book he wrote about his
Oh my God,
grandkids?
with his granddaughter.
Yes.
It was great, and they're both on. So Will, I've known you a long time, but tell people your start story. This is a family deal with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on an herb farm. That's what my parents did, and so like my passion for food came from more of the farming side of things and understanding that, you know, we plant the plants this time of year, we you know, care for them, and then, you know, it was always, what do you do with it after you create this plant that's in a pot and somebody takes it home and uses it to cook with? So I naturally just started kind of playing with it and picking things like that. I also ruined some of my mom's food by stealing spices and throwing it in there and various other things. But, you know, I think for me, what it taught me was that there was sort of seasonality, right? You know, every year there was something that you were looking forward to. Like, this is when this stuff comes into bloom. That's when this stuff's at its best flavor. And I think that just kind of helped me get really, really excited about it. And then we ended up putting a restaurant on our herb farm because, you know, farms can only make so much money in Massachusetts. It's like 5 months out of the year at best that you're actually making money. So we put a restaurant on the farm, and that was my high school project, and we just kept on doing that little by little, and, you know, we kept that going still to this day.
So Brittany, why were these two in particular, Citrus and Salt and Amba, why were they picked?
So Amba was
you and your-
selected for best reason to stay in, which basically means takeout. We were super impressed with the meal deal that you have with this rotisserie chicken right here. Comes with 2 sides,
Listen to
2
her.
sauces. What else? What am I
2 sides,
missing?
2 sauces, 2 meze, 2 pita.
Yeah,
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah,
So 40
I mean,
bucks,
especially
you
a
know.
day
Yeah,
like today.
very-
Nobody
great
wants to turn the
deal.
oven on today. So
So this
So
would
what
be,
about-
you call up and you get it delivered.
Yeah, so you go to ambacambridge.com, or you can find us on, we're on Toast, we're on Square, and we're on DoorDash and Uber Eats. So you can go on there, and then you can get this all sent to your house. You don't have to do anything but pay.
Why'd you pick Citrus and Salt?
So this was our winner for Best Girls Night Out, but I will say it's really a good night out for anybody. It's an absolutely beautiful restaurant. Just the decor just is stunning. And you guys also have that amazing drink. We mentioned the bottled margaritas that come with 4. Yeah. So it's really fun. Good party stuff.
Why girls' night out? Why for girls?
Well, I think it could work. Like I said, it could work for anybody.
Yep.
But I think there's some of the decor has a feminine.
Our
touch.
demographic is definitely 25-year-old women,
Really?
And so never did I ever wake up and say I want to open a pink restaurant, But honestly, sincerely, we don't, as chefs, we don't cook for ourselves anymore. We cook for our guests, and so that's what they wanted. So we gave them what they want, and just made it bigger and better, and here we are.
Speaking of what they wanted, Marjorie, totally unprofessionally, was using the whole break during the news, eating your food.
I was.
Which we're supposed to do on the air when you tell us. So starting with you, what'd you bring? And we'll get the camera on some of this stuff.
Buttermilk and Bourbon is historically known for fried chicken, so we bought you some amazing fried chicken. We just started offering it gluten-free, so this is actually gluten-free.
Oh, really?
Pretty cool.
Can you tell the difference, honestly?
I can't tell the difference.
That's
and that makes us nervous sometimes because it's exactly, we might as well just go gluten-free because it's easy. But super delicious. We sell 1,500 pounds of chicken a week out of that restaurant. It's pretty bonkers. And then crunchy strawberry salad. It's got fried shallots, toasted walnuts, some burrata with a grapefruit salad. And these are little hand pies, slightly heavy for the weather, but nonetheless delicious. Meatloaf, caramelized onions, red onion jam, and a house-made bourbon.
They are the same size as the weapons that were dropped on the nuclear facilities in Iran, give or take a couple of inches. So what's your deal, Will Gilson?
So we brought the meal deal to show. Our rotisserie chicken is really the star of what we do there. It kind of leads into everything else. We brine this for 24 hours, and then we finish it with shawarma spices, some dried rose petals. Really, really, really flavorful. But the other stuff that we have here is one of our most popular things is our rice bowl here. So this is saffron rice. This is topped off with a Baharat flavored lamb. We have some black garlic tahini sauce, some shawarma sauce, basically kind of like, the halal cart in New York kind of feel to it. But then we've got some sweet treats here. This is like a baklava bar. We have a black sesame cookie. And then I know you love burgers because I've cooked for you plenty of burgers at my restaurants.
I have bought quite a few.
So this is called the pita mac. 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions.
Down.
On a pita.
Let's see that, baby. Thank you very much. We'll get to the other best of things. But I really wanted to ask you, what's Gordon Ramsay's deal? I mean, what do you think? Tell the truth. Raise your right hand. What are you really
I'll tell you a
thinking?
quick story of how great the man is. My wife was pregnant at the time. It was during COVID. We were filming. We were in Burbank at the time, and we were in a bubble because there's basically only 4 of us on camera. We weren't allowed to go home in between seasons, and Gordon was like, basically, screw the producers. I'll fly you home. Boarded his private jet. He flew me to Boston, gave me a ride so I could see my wife for 3 days before I flew back. Snuck back into my hotel and we filmed again.
Well,
so he's a super great guy. I mean, it's TV. So, I mean, am I that angry in real life? No, but on TV, I am.
Do you know how many people ask me that about you, Jim? They're like, what's he really like?
I know. And what do you say, by the way?
I say he's a great man. He's statuesque.
He is statuesque.
He cares about the people.
I was hoping to hear. Thank you very much.
But
Jamie is laughing. What is that about?
On Gordon Ramsay's show, you had to do a lot of yelling too.
Yeah.
I always feel bad sometimes for the contestants.
Yell for us a little bit, will you? Come on.
It's very easy. We're filmed for 3 weeks, and we're looking for someone for a real job, for a real chef with a real $250,000 salary. So we just don't have time to be super polite. Would you be so kind as to pass the shallots? We're just there to find the best, and it is what it is. And
can I tell you? Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing I love about what you do is I love the name Buttermilk and Bourbon and Butterbird over in Watertown. Tell the people about Butterbird over in Watertown.
So Butterbird is bird being chicken and butter being a homage to buttermilk and bourbon. And it's basically we do breakfast, lunch, and dinner, really amazing breakfast sandwiches, breakfast burritos. We make our own sausage. We make everything from scratch, all the sauces. And then we basically do a fried chicken lunch and dinner with, again, the process with the chicken is insane. It's 3 days. We brine it in fish sauce. We dredge it. It's just a lot. But honestly, the actual chicken is so good to me. It's the only thing that I still eat because, frankly, I'm so sick of my own food, but I still eat the chicken.
What a great recommendation. That's beautiful. A couple. By the way, I want to echo what these guys said as a consumer, not a cook. I almost every year try to go to virtually every restaurant you guys pick, because you do want an independent third-party kind of deal. So as a consumer, it matters to me a lot. We got a couple of posts here. Someone on YouTube, and we erased it, my apologies. Somebody on text. Why'd you dump the worst of? I have to say, for people like us who are as low rent as they get, Marjorie and I, we love the worst stuff. Why'd you dump that?
You know, it's funny. We actually have it. It's on the back page this month.
It is?
Yeah. It's not part of the main feature, but we did it the last 2 years. We've done it on the back page. I didn't know.
So what is? Give us an example. Do you have it in your head?
There's one I can think of. The Jordan Hudson and Bill
Belichick.
Oh,
excellent!
I know. It's
fabulous.
I know.
No, it's an easy hit, but I mean, still, it's pretty good.
But you got some cool stuff on here. The tough student arrest, that was from Mesa Ozturk that was arrested. That was one of your worst things. And Jane's Addiction Boston Brawl. Yes. I don't know what that is. What is that?
That's the Jane's Addiction, the band. They got into a huge fight.
That's
Perry
right.
Farrell and Dave Navarro on stage.
That's right.
But guys, that's not low rent enough. I mean, you got to call out people. You got to pick a restaurant where the food is crap. I don't want to hurt anybody's business. Whatever. You got to pick a show that's horrible.
You got rid of that a long time ago.
Actually, the reason we brought you guys here. No.
Thank you. So before we get to the other best ofs, Will is sick of this question because we asked him before. How's business in general? I mean, from everything, from tariffs to post-COVID to workforce issues, obviously with the attack on undocumented people. How's business?
I mean, I would say overall it's solid. It's just very up and down. I mean, we have a great day, then we have a bad day. Sort of at the end, it all evens out, but it's been dramatic.
Do you worry a lot?
I always worry. I mean, if I didn't worry, I'd probably go out of business. So I do. I lose sleep all the time. We have one slow, like yesterday, we were a little slow, and I was like, what's going on? Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's not.
I mean, for us in Cambridge, the concern was like, what happens to Harvard? You know, I mean, if you suck that much money out of the Cambridge economy, where all of our restaurants are, what happens, right? You know, and what if there's no international students? You're talking about taking like 10, 15% of like the Cambridge GDP out, right? Like, I mean, that's just like removing people from apartment buildings, people who go to takeout restaurants, who grab drinks at your bar. Like, that's the kind of stuff that actually affects restaurants. Like, it's not the grandiose stuff or the fears or the threats. It's the actual things of when people don't want to come to your city anymore.
You know, I'm so glad you said that because, you know, even for people who are saying, why do we want international students or whatever the hell it is, no one thinks about the trickle-down impact. They don't want your restaurants hurt. They don't want the dry cleaners hurt. They don't want the whatever hurt.
Trickle-down economics has never actually worked. Trickle-down, like, problems actually happen.
That's
a good line, my friend.
Trickle-down economics has never worked. We're
talking to Jason Santos, owns a lot of restaurants, was celebrated in Boston Magazine's Best of for Citrus and Salt. Will Gilson, a lot of restaurants, celebrated for AMBA, which is his newest thing. And Brittany Jasnoff is the executive editor of Boston Magazine. What are some of the other categories that you hit on here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have some really fun ones. There's a business called Melda Clothing. I don't know if you've heard of her. No. She makes these amazing bedazzled sports jerseys. So like, you know, Celtics jersey with sequins.
Jason's got one on underneath.
Yeah. You do?
Yeah. My socks.
So we love her. Let's see, what else? In west of Boston, we are celebrating the pickleball kingdom known as Bossy, which we're very excited about. Opened recently and, you know, kind of has an amazing kind of, you know, amenities, restaurants, things like that. So.
Is this your best-selling issue of the year?
Yeah, I'd say so.
But it's all
People
over
are
the
so
place.
Excited about it.
I mean, you got luggage upgrade. You've got things about buying where you get tennis rackets, your best tennis rackets. You got standout stays for like different hotels, women's haircuts, men's haircuts. All this, it's like a guide to Boston. You really want to save it and keep it because every time you look for some place to go, day spa. Oh God, the Mandarin Oriental.
Oh, it's great. I know.
One of my kids got that for a present and said it was like unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it just shows you like Boston Magazine has its hand on the pulse and is just aware of everything, and it's like super important and.
Do you say this when she's not here, same kind of thing?
It's honestly, I probably get myself in trouble. It's kind of the only thing. You know, there's all these self-proclaimed awards. You get all these emails. I honestly don't read any of it. This is the only one I sincerely care about.
Some people think our show matters, if you know what I mean.
Sorry?
Some people think our show actually matters. What do you think?
A little bit, right? A little bit, I guess. Okay, I mean, you're into that.
But does your show live on someone's nightstand or coffee table?
That is
for 9 months.
Right? Here's a good one. Badass Mom. Who do you think that might be, Jim?
I don't know.
Michelle Wu.
Oh, of course.
The mayor of Boston.
Well, she was the 151st most influential person in Boston.
Oh, yeah. Baby Mira.
Mira, the little baby kind of deal. So if you're sick of your own food, when you go out to eat, where do you go?
I actually just ate at Geppetto.
Is that really true?
Honest to God, truth. It's one of my favorite restaurants in Boston, and I mean that so sincerely.
That's Will's Italian joint.
Yeah.
North Point. Is that what that's called, that part of Cambridge?
Cambridge Crossing.
Cambridge Crossing, I'm sorry.
I don't go out to eat a lot. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and honestly, I'm just exhausted all the time from working, so I don't go out to eat a lot. If I do, it's like a little mom and pop place. I love going to like Dorchester for Vietnamese food, but his is probably the last real restaurant I went to.
Okay, now the burden's on you, my friend.
I think you got to check out Tony Soucy's place that he just opened up in the North End, which is also an award winner, Little Sage. Like it's a great story. I mean, Tony had the Sage back in the day. They called it Little Sage until he moved to the South End and opened Big Sage. Now he's back at the North End where he belongs, and it's called Little Sage.
You know, Marjorie likes to pretend like I'm a world traveler, Brittany. I wish I was.
You are. You're a world eater.
Jim
is out to dinner like 3 nights a week. It's unbelievable.
I don't want to ask them because obviously it's ridiculous to ask them. I don't. There's no better food anywhere that I go than here. Yeah. I mean, the restaurant. I mean, your General Excellence Award is my favorite restaurant, Sarma, which wins every single year. And Cassie Puma is brilliant and should have won the James Beard thing, but she was a finalist kind of deal. I mean, what are your colleagues from other cities? Everybody talks down to Boston cuisine. It's fabulous.
Yeah, they shouldn't, because it's amazing. I mean, I was just thinking about how every month we do a hot list, 8 openings, 8 things we're excited about this month. And we have trouble even just narrowing it down to 8 because there's always stuff happening. It's exciting.
Well, Gilson, you didn't tell people about your milkshake.
Oh, yeah. So
this is really great.
One of the things that you can get at Amba, and I'd actually say it's probably our least ordered and most underrated dish, is the halva shake. So it is completely vegan. It is made with oat milk, coconut milk, vanilla, cold brew concentrate, but then halva candy and tahini all pureed together, and then we put it into a milkshake machine. And
that's wonderful.
It's great.
And I'm going to get a little caffeine buzz from this too.
Well, you can also get affogato style. You can put an espresso shot on top.
Oh, an espresso shot on top. Yeah. Okay,
What is this thing I'm eating again?
That's a pita mac.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What's on that thing?
2 all-beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a pita.
Pita bun. Thank you. Very good. You got one person applauding for you there.
Okay.
That's usually how my day goes.
One more than normal.
Yeah.
So you're having a big soiree at Boston Magazine. Can anybody go to this, or do you have to be one of the winners?
Anybody can go.
Oh,
you do
fun.
need tickets, though, which you can get on bostonmagazine.com, but it's July 16th at Roadrunner. And it's great.
Fun.
There's so many restaurants participating, and great food, great drinks. It's a good time.
So you'd be able to go from stand to stand to stand and eat all this great food and have all these great drinks.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a fun time. Roadrunner's right down where we are. Right
down the street.
By GBH.
Fried chicken's insane, too.
Fried chicken. Everything's
great.
insane.
Congratulations to you, too. Brittany, congratulations to you and your colleagues. It's a great issue. Get it? It's on Monday. It was on the stands, right?
Today, actually.
Today, whatever it is. Best of Boston 2025.
Yeah,
great
and it's got everything in there. Nail salons, shoe places. It's got everything in there. It's a wonderful guide to restaurants and everything else you want to do around Greater Boston, I should say.
And by the way, for those who send texts in complaining about me chewing on the air, it was Marjorie chewing.
I was chewing.
During the segment. It was
Actually,
not me.
I think you were chewing.
I'm chewing now.
I was trying not to chew during the segment, Jim, but
great to
I
see
did
all three
miss
of
a
you.
few times.
You're all chew-worthy, I should say. Really, in the best sense of the word.
I'm going to put that on my next award.
I would. Best of Boston.
We'll get matching tattoos after this.
Congratulations to all 3 of you for the great restaurants and the great magazine. Thank you. Now on by the Boston Globe, right?
Yes.
Boston Globe is running Boston Magazine now, which is great. Okay, we've been speaking with Boston Magazine executive editor Brittany Jasnoff and Jason Santos, the man behind a number of places, including Buttermilk and Bourbon, Citrus and Salt, and Butterbird, and Will Gilson, the man behind a number of places as well, including Puritan and Company, Puritan Oyster Bar, Jim, and Amba, which, did I pronounce it right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Geppetto, the
if you don't want to go anywhere, you can just
whatever.
sit home and order the wonderful rotisserie chicken from Amba, and that'll keep you very happy.
Great to see you.
You can find about this year's lineup, these guys, and other great places at bostonmagazine.com/best of Boston edition. Okay, coming up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines because we need advice. What is the best way to beat the heat? It's a little warm out today, you may have noticed. It's going to feel like we're in the triple digits today, like 100 degrees. What are you doing to stay cool? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's been 3 years since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Since then, doctors have become more supportive of self-managed abortion with pills.
Now the healthcare profession is saying, wait, does that person really need to come in to do that ultrasound? Lo and behold, there's all this evidence already out there that no, they don't.
That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, outlier author Malcolm Gladwell, and geopolitical economist Pippa Malmgren. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Margery Eagan, Jim Braude, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow with Governor Maura Healey. She'll be with us from 11 to noon. So 150 million Americans are currently living in a heat dome, whatever that is. Temperature is expected to top 100 degrees for dozens of states, ours included. In case of living under a rock, although it might actually feel pretty nice right about now. In fact, they're saying, I don't know what the temperature is now. Today could be the hottest day in the history of Boston. Dense cities usually fare the worst with hot air that gets trapped in the asphalt and buildings. It's called the urban heat island effect. Bottom line, it's summer. It's really hot. I'm hot. Marjorie's hot.
We're all hot.
So we're opening the lines to end the show with a classic BPR chestnut. What are you doing to stay cool? It's like a PSA kind of thing to help your fellow listeners. We will hear about Marjorie's infamous wet sheet trick. Which has really changed the lives of millions.
That's right.
Millions of listeners. Maybe you're just cranking the air conditioner, environment be damned. Also, we're going to talk about the fact Zoe was telling us this morning that all of our team were on a call this morning. All of them are rather young. Not one of them has bought an air conditioner unless there's a hand-me-down from a family member. Do I have it right so far? They don't do air conditioners. That is demented. In any case, we want to know if you're in that category. And why don't we just accept here in Boston that multiple decrepit hand-me-down window units is the preferred method of cooling our homes. If you can face the traffic, maybe you're on your way to the Cape, eager to post up at the Beachcomber and dip a few toes in the water. Whatever it is, what do you do to beat the heat? At 877-301-8970 is the number. Now, could you describe...
See the texture?
No.
2 things regular listeners do not want to hear about anymore: Jim and his daylight savings time, and Marjorie and her moist sheets.
Well, can I just say something?
Give a crap about your opinion.
Thank you. That anonymous texter has been blocked. Okay. Now, the hottest temperature ever in Boston was 104 degrees. What is it now? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Good. We don't know. I have no idea. That was 1911, July 4th. We want to know what you're doing. And, Marjorie, I know you're reluctant to do this. But faithful listeners and new listeners always like to hear some of the classics. Can you explain to people, please, particularly for new listeners, what the wet sheet approach is?
Okay, well, I'm very sorry.
And don't disparage it as you're describing
No,
it.
I did this for a long time because I was holding on. I never had any air conditioners. So what I do is you take your sheets off the bed and you put them in the washing machine, and you take them out of the washing machine, you put them back in the bed. And then when you get into the sheets, they're still kind of wet, and it's like being in an air-conditioned bed. And people say, oh, no, it's going to make the bed moldy, and it's really gross. Well, it's so hot that it all dries up by 3 o'clock in the morning, so there's not any moldy problem with the mattresses. But if you don't want to go through all that trouble, there's an easier thing.
What is it?
You just take a spray bottle, and you spray your pillowcase, and you spray the sheets, and you spray the whole thing.
Good.
And it's, kind of wet, and you can spray your pajamas too if you want to. And a lot of people. I did that for a long time, but now I've broken down and I've gotten the air conditioner.
By the way, when Marjorie said there's no mold issue when you dampen the sheets, she also meant to say in the next pledge drive we will have a Jim and Marjorie mold scraper, which is available for $10 a month or $120 all at once.
It really works.
Now I have my thing too, which Marjorie was not generous enough to ask me about. When I was in China. When I adopted our first kid.
Yes.
I saw it for the first time, but now it's sold everywhere, Walgreens, that kind of thing. It costs like $4 then. It's probably like $8 now. It's a little tiny plastic fan with a battery in it and a little water holder in the back, and you hold it, and it not only fans you, if that's the proper verb, it sprays water. Have you ever been to Fenway in one of the things on a
Yes.
really hot day?
They spray
and they
the
have
water.
the fan that
Yep.
is like 4,000 inches wide or something. It's a mini version of the same thing for very cheap. 877-301-8970. And by the way, you know what else we learned this morning before we get to your calls? Marjorie's going to describe this if she can. People think quick cold showers are the ticket.
Yeah,
we
they're
read this
not.
morning a scientific article saying it doesn't achieve the desired purpose. Can you explain that, please?
Well, they say that this whole thing about how your body radiates heat,
Exactly.
and the cold shower will cause your blood vessels to constrict, and what you want is your blood vessels to open up, especially near the surface of your skin, which is a way for your body to get rid of the heat. It says approximately 60% of our body heat radiates into the surrounding environment by electromagnetic thermal radiation.
Exactly.
I don't really understand that.
Beautifully explained,
And then
yeah.
the other 22% of our body heat is lost through sweating. But you should do the tepid or lukewarm shower or bath is the way to do it, because you don't want to constrict your blood vessels. I never knew that.
Haven't you been doing a cold shower your whole life?
No, it's because it's too cold. I was
cold.
always going for the tepid thing all the way along. So
Okay,
we have
fine.
some texts here.
What are they?
Okay, Andrew in Westford says, I've been in the AC drinking chilled wine for the past two days. I don't intend to stop now.
Beautiful.
Woody, our UPS driver who texts us a lot, says, I'm sitting on a bench on the Commonwealth Avenue Mall under a tree and enjoying a nice breeze. It's warm but much cooler than in my truck. Cars get so hot.
Cars get hot, yeah.
And then somebody else said they are sitting with their feet in a basin of cold water, and it seems to be working quite nicely.
Wow.
Ever try that?
No, but here is was this Zoe who wrote this note about why young people don't have air conditioners? This is, whoever wrote it, one of our colleagues, said it's the life of, this actually makes some sense, it's the life of a renter. No one wants to lug a 50-pound AC unit from place to place. One apartment could have central air, then the next has nothing. That's a very astute
Well, that's a good point.
observation.
They're very heavy.
Kind of thing.
They're very heavy.
They are.
The little ones are not that expensive.
Marjorie got really upset this morning when she figured out she got a really cheap air conditioner. She was bragging. And then it was clear after we had our little staff chat this morning, she bought a piece of crap. She got it really cheap, and it's horrible. I mean, that is what
Well, yeah, it was $150. I thought it seems
she
to be
has to put it
working
on the
okay.
pillow next to her for it to be
Yeah, that's
of help.
right on top of me.
You
But
want
you
to
got
take-
one of those, what do they call those ones you
Midea,
got?
all of which have been recalled.
Midea,
It
yeah,
was
they all got
wire cutter
recalled.
#1 air conditioner, all recalled because of mold. Let's go to Kathy in Rhode Island.
James says he has fire sprinklers in his apartment, so on hot nights he just sets those off while he's sleeping, and the whole thing comes down, rains right on his head.
Okay, let's go to, where are we going? Kathy in Rhode Island, you're first. We're talking about how do you stay cool on a day like today. Hello there.
Basically, how you doing?
We're good.
You
Thank you.
have to live like you're in a mortuary.
Exactly.
You have to keep your windows closed.
Yes.
You have to keep the shades down. You have to keep all the outside hot temperature out of your house from the start of the day all the way. And your house will be cool. It will stay cool. In my poor younger days, that's how I lived, without an air conditioner, without central air. And people actually thought that I had air conditioning, but it was keeping the sun out, keeping the hot air out, and it stays cool, but it's just darker than
Now,
what you would
staying
like.
with what you described as the mortuary approach, have you ever tried napping in a casket? Have you ever tried that, Kathy, to stay cool?
No, but when I was a teenager, I was talking with some friends saying, hey, how about if we rent a hearse and do a party ride?
That's fabulous. No, I think you really are spot on. Kathy, that was excellent advice. Thank you very
Have a
much
great day.
for the call. You as well.
An anonymous texter wants to know, since we talk about moldy chestnuts all the time, Jim, if the mold scraper will work on chestnuts.
Yes, it does. $10 a month, $120 all at once. 877-301-8970.
Paula from Pembroke has the wet shirt system. She said she just got off the golf course. It was 98 degrees, but her wet long sleeve shirt kept her cool. So you just keep spraying. You can spray it with water. That does
What
work
you
too.
can also do,
or you can put ice behind your back.
you can do one of those wet towel things that you just
With
tie
ice in
around
it.
your neck.
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah.
Some people sit next to, have a lot of ice. They sit next to the ice.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you mean they sit next to the ice?
They have
What are they, like buy a bag of ice and you
a block block of ice.
Where do you get a block of ice, Marjorie?
Brookline Ice and Coal.
When was the last time you did that?
Well, I haven't gotten one for a while, but I've read about it. Brookline Ice and Coal, you get those big blocks of ice.
There's one of those in Cambridge. It's not called Brookline, where you get a big block of ice.
Oh, there you go.
But nobody gets a big block of ice.
How do you know?
I've spoken to people in my neighborhood.
Then why do they sell blocks of ice?
They're not doing as well as they used to do.
Somebody's buying the blocks
Even
of ice,
with climate
Jim.
change,
I would say today they might be selling quite a few.
Maybe they are.
Okay, let's go to Tamara. Hi, Tamara.
Tamara, we call her. Hi, Tamara.
Yes, you do, Jim. You remember.
We do. It's great. Hi, how are you?
So,
yeah.
I'm great. So I am a crazy 56-year-old woman.
Yeah. That's a hell of an introduction. Go ahead, Tamara. I'm sorry.
Thank you. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
So I run a summer camp for kids.
Oh.
And two things I want to tell you. Marjorie, it's a half-day camp, and it's only $150 for the week.
Wow.
That's not too bad. Only half day, though. What do they do for the rest of the day?
Well, it's 8 to noon, so they can drop them off before work and come get them at lunch. But but I'm 56, and there's no way I'm doing a whole day.
Wait a second, Tamara, when you started the call, weren't you 66 at the beginning of the call?
No, she was 56.
And now you're 56? Oh,
no,
you're 56. Okay,
no,
I thought you said you were 60s.
So anyway, I want to tell you, we have 4 to 12-year-olds. I fill a huge cooler with 10 pounds of ice every day.
Wow.
Then I fill spray bottles with water, put them in that cooler. Then throughout the day, the kids think it's hysterical to spray me down.
That's pretty good.
That feels pretty good. What's the name of your Tamara? What's the name of your camp?
It's Overlook Farm in Rutland. You can go to Overlook Farm Rutland on socials and see all the fun we're having.
Oh, that's a famous place.
I also wanted you to know it is.
Yeah.
We also have a mud kitchen, and we fill puddles with mud, and I promise you that cools you down. And then you spray the kids off after, and then it's so darn hot they dry immediately, and we have a blast.
Wow, that's a hell of a call there.
You're making
Thanks,
my point, Tamara, about the sheets, because it's so hot, the sheets dry really quickly. Now, Mike in North Carolina,
Thank you, Tamara. What do you say?
who listens to us quite a bit,
What does he say?
I think he says, bring on the moldy chestnuts.
Good for
He
him.
lists a few of them.
Yeah, what are they?
Real or fake Christmas trees.
I like that.
Whiter colored lights.
Love that.
Regifting.
Huge.
Daylight saving time.
Yes.
MCAS replacement.
Nope.
4-day work week.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about a kid kicking your airplanes?
Hate it. I had that experience.
Get the air marshals ready.
They were.
My head is spinning, says
Mine
Mike.
too.
Terry cloth robes, slippers, dickies, wet sheets, Eton emergency crank radio. Please keep it coming. Where can I get tickets to the BPR show live?
Call me after the show. I'll get you tickets.
You don't need tickets.
You don't?
No, you don't need tickets. You don't need any reservations. Just show up and stay as long as you want.
An anonymous texter says, how can you keep the hot air out without turning the radio off? That's a good one. Thank you very much.
That's a good one.
Tamara, thanks for your call. 877-301-897. Do you know, there was a story, I don't know what the magazine was, in which we read it, about how air conditioners are now, the Wall Street Journal described a certain line of air conditioners as, quote, sexy. And then there was a piece in another magazine, this is true.
That's right.
Saying, I am sexually attracted to my new smart AC.
That's
so
right.
apparently there's a whole new thing with air conditioners.
Yeah, they're supposed to be aesthetically pleasing. It's kind of like the Mac computers. They're supposed to look lovely like that, but they're more expensive. The average unit ranges from $340 to $600, so you have to decide how important it is for you to be sexually attracted to your air conditioner. I think most of us would take a pass on that one, Jim.
Well,
I could be.
You're speaking for yourself, obviously, not all of us.
I could be wrong.
By the way, Marjorie again she mentioned high-end air conditioners, $360 to $400. She got a fabulous deal. Spent $140. It doesn't work, but the deal that she described this morning.
No, it does.
You spent $140.
But I did make a big mistake though.
What was that?
This is at Home Depot when I went to get one of these stand-up fans. It sounded like a good idea. It was a stand-up fan. You put water, it's supposed to spray the water and the air out. Yeah. Big waste of time.
Didn't do it?
Big mistake.
Really
I made a big mistake. And they said it was going to be great, and it was not great. You know, this is a tough day to be a dog walker. And this dog walker just texted us, I'm relying on my cooling towel and cooling hat. They both have UV protection as well, but it's really dangerous for dogs to be out too long today. You know, the sidewalk that gets so hot on their paws.
And plus, my younger kid's dog almost literally starts panting in ways that you think it's going to pass out.
Yeah.
You just can't handle this kind of heat kind of thing.
This person says they put a cotton terry towel down and sleep on that.
Yeah.
Why would that work?
It's the same person who bought an air conditioner for $90.
Okay, because it says it creates a little circulation and does not get sticky. It absorbs the sweat. I guess that's it. If you're sweating, it will absorb it. You don't want a velour beach towel. No. You want a cotton loop terry towel. Better than wet sheets, says Annie in Rhode Island.
Excellent advice. Elaine in Cambridge, you are next on BPR. We're talking about how to stay cool on days like this. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Excellent.
I tried the wet sheet many years ago when I lived in a fourth floor apartment.
How'd that go?
Not very well.
Oh.
Why is that?
Well, it cooled me off, but I felt really clammy. My whole bed was clammy. It was disgusting. So after that, I tried the wet T-shirt instead of the wet sheet, but I've never done it since.
Oh. Well, that's really sad. It didn't work out. So what is your preferred method of staying cool on really hot days, Elaine in Cambridge?
Pretty obvious to stay in air conditioning.
Yeah. Can you imagine, by the way, I hate to get
Elaine,
serious
thank
for
you
a
for
second.
The call.
Can you imagine you don't have air conditioning because you can't afford it right now?
No, it would be horrible. It'd be horrible. Well, that's why they have these sites
cooling
around the
centers,
city.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a drag, right? You have to go someplace and sit around.
Yeah, but you stay alive.
To cool
that's
off.
probably a pretty good
thing. It's really... this person puts a frozen bottle of water in front of the fan.
I've done that. I have done that.
And Rebecca from Florida says, since moving to from Mass to Florida, I realized that to deal with the heat, I had to switch from full-length turtlenecks to Dickies.
Dickies, that's fine. We've only gotten about 12 Dickie texts so far. Let's go to Karen.
Oh, listen to this.
Karen,
I
sit
love
tight.
this one.
What is it?
Sunglasses, cigarettes, Buick Skylark, and Kenny Loggins.
Did you ever have a
convertible?
Convertible?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I think I saw a picture,
a Mustang.
Right? You got a Mustang?
Yeah, it was a red Mustang. It got
Remember
stolen,
my convertible story I told you?
No.
I'm going to tell it right now.
Okay.
I was working in the Catskills, and I bought this is a few years ago, more than a few years ago. I bought a used Thunderbird convertible. You want to know how much it cost?
$400.
$50.
Wow.
Now, you know what I got for $50? Almost what you got with your air conditioner.
Yeah.
I'm driving this thing. It's a silver Thunderbird convertible.
Oh, like the song, like the Mark Cohn song.
I take it out for the first day. This is a true story, and I am like in exultation because my whole young life had wanted a convertible.
They're great.
And I'm about 10 miles from where I worked in the Catskills, and it started to rain. So obviously, what I did is I pressed the button for the thing to go up. Do you know what happened?
Did not work.
Didn't go up. So you know what I did with the car?
What?
Abandoned it. That's totally true story. Pulled it to the side of the road
terrible.
And left.
That's
okay,
terrible.
that's it. That's me in convertibles. Let's go.
I like the hard ones that go into the back of the the trunk.
But they don't work that well. Did they work?
I have no idea.
But then what happens to your trunk?
I don't know, Jim.
No, you don't have a trunk.
Well, you must have something.
You have no trunk. You have a trunk with a roof to your car in the trunk.
Okay, I don't know. They look pretty good because the soft convertibles.
I don't think they make those anymore.
People can cut through the top and steal your car.
When did that happen last?
I told you my Mustang got stolen.
It did?
Someone cut through the
Where
roof
was that?
Right in front of my house in Fall River.
That's not true. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, we got robbed a lot too.
They did?
It was dog eat dog.
On Rock Street?
4 times.
Is that really true?
Yeah, a lot.
What'd they take?
They used to take things like your grandmother's silver.
Oh.
Things like that, yeah.
Oh.
We were home once. And
they broke in while you were home?
They broke in while we were home, yeah. At one time they put, this terrible black magic marker all over my bedroom, but they trying to get out because my mother yelled over the thing, and then they started to get out and they kept going the wrong direction. Anyway, why did they even bring that up?
What was that story? What happened? What do you mean they went
They couldn't figure out how to get out of the house.
Oh.
They panicked.
It's like being at Jordan's Furniture,
yeah,
for example.
they opened the door, it was the bathroom. They opened another door, it was the closet. We're panicking. They weren't going to get out of the house. And they finally figured it out and they went out the front door.
That is a great story.
I know, it's a terrible story.
Amazing.
Matt from Jamaica Plain, thank you for calling.
Hey, good afternoon.
To you
I have an unconventional approach.
Please.
So I have a 1-year-old, and for me, the answer is CVS. I love taking the baby in the stroller inside CVS.
Yeah, cool.
Every aisle is an adventure. The AC is strong. There's no glare. There's no windows.
Every aisle is an adventure. What a great line.
Yeah.
So how old?
It works well.
How old's the kid?
He's 13 months. I called a few times last summer because I was home a lot, and I'm back on vacation because I'm a teacher, and he's 13 months.
Oh, great. So Matt, how long can you spend doing the aisles at CVS?
It depends on what catches his attention, but I'd say solid 15, maybe 20 minutes. If you give him like a bag of popcorners or Cheetos, Does it crinkle?
Yeah.
That works well.
Same with me. Matt, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay, we forgot to play some of our sound.
I know, we have some great
We have
sound.
some really good sound. This is a creepy sound from the Twilight Zone. Remember the Twilight Zone with
Rod
Rod
Serling.
Serling, the classic sci-fi series from the 60s. This clip comes from an episode where New York residents are trying to survive as the Earth moves closer and closer to the sun.
There was a scientist on the radio this morning. He said that it'll get a lot hotter more each day now that we're moving so close to the sun. And that's why
The word that Mrs. Bronson is unable to put into the hot, still, sodden air is doomed. Because the people you've just seen have been handed a death sentence. And all of man's little devices to stir up the air are no longer luxuries. They happen to be pitiful and panicky keys to survival. The hottest day in history, and you're about to spend it in the Twilight Zone.
How brilliant was that?
Oh my God, I love that TV show. It was so
I watched
scary.
some of these. These are ancient. I watched some of these with my younger daughter. It actually holds up.
Oh yeah,
it
they're
really
great.
Does hold
They're
up.
great.
They're brilliantly constructed.
Should we play one more clip
Plus,
from
they're only
Seinfeld?
30 seconds. Sure, and then we'll get to your calls.
Okay,
Don't go
here's
away.
some sound. This is Seinfeld, season 5. Kramer brings Jerry a new air conditioning unit and poorly installs it. Chaos ensues when he goes back to check on it.
12,000 BTUs of raw cooling power, huh? Yeah. Installed.
That's it. You don't have to screw it in or anything.
No, just plug it in and the Commando 8 does the rest. My papaya. The air conditioner! I think it got the top.
It's pretty funny.
It falls out the window.
Karen in Rhode Island, you're next on BPR. We're talking about what keeps you cool on hot days like this. Hi.
Hi, guys. Long-time listener. I love the show.
Thank you very
I don't think I have anything quite as interesting as a sexy air conditioner.
That's okay.
But in the affiliated construction trades that I work in, you can actually purchase cooling vests now that are done with the flexible gel packs in basically like a high-visibility vest.
That is fabulous.
Put them in the freezer. You put them in the freezer overnight. You keep them in your lunch cooler. You can switch out the packs in and out. And you also can get ones that are thermoelectric that just kind of continue cooling the whole time.
Wow.
By the way, that is fabulous. I never heard of that. These cooling vests. I'm going to check them out. Hey, Karen, thanks. We appreciate it. That was a great one, actually.
Do you know Marilyn Monroe put her underwear in the freezer in the 7-Year Itch?
No.
I didn't remember that scene, but that sounds like a great idea.
7-Year Itch when her dress blows up in that classic scene over the grate.
I don't remember.
No. It is.
Oh,
Thank
John
you,
says
Parker,
it is, because John
obviously.
knows everything.
No, he does know everything.
Yeah, that was a great scene. Okay, days like today are a good day to actually go into the office, utilizing the over-air-conditioned office on days like today and letting the corporate let the corporation foot the electricity bill. That's Chloe from Southbridge. But you know what people often complain about? We haven't done this year.
What is
Is
that?
it's too cold in the office. The air conditioner's on so high. You have to go into the office. You have to, have a sweater on. If you have just a skirt on, your legs are freezing because they over air condition too many of these offices, Jim. Scott and Needham, what do you think, Scott?
Hello, Scott and Needham.
Hey, Jimbo.
Hey.
Hi.
I got two things for you.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy that was in the Navy, and they were mostly in the South Pacific. And one day it was a real hot day, and he's got his wrists, and he's running cold water over them. And he said he learned that when he was in the Navy to keep your whole body cool.
The pulse points.
Is that what
right?
does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pulse points. I've heard that too.
That's a good one. What's the other one?
And the other one was when I was a kid, all we had were fans. It was back in the 60s. So my dad would, once we'd gone to bed, he'd come in with some rubbing alcohol and cotton balls. He'd just rub our arms and legs, and you would just cool you right off.
Really?
You know what's also a great cooling like that? Witch hazel is a great. You ever use witch hazel?
That's similar.
Very similar. Hey, Scott, those were great. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Several people have said that Marilyn Monroe did put her underwear in the freezer in the 7-Day Itch, and they report that many of these same people put their dickies in the freezer.
That's funny. Who wrote this little note about the peppermint essential oils? Whatever it is. One of our coworkers, Zoe, thank you. I usually wet some hand towels, put some peppermint essential oils on them. You ever done that?
No.
And then put them in the freezer you pop them on your neck after
That sounds
it got
pretty
really
good.
cold. That's actually great.
Cold things around your neck are really good. Now, what is this about the live sound from one of our producers?
Well, you never
here?
know. This is Hannah saying occasionally during the show they come up with sound which is makes us nervous. But should we give it a go? Is this sound really exist?
This is the sound of Hannah installing a air conditioner unit, I believe, on Sunday.
Here it is. Okay,
We're
or
gonna
not.
get it. We're going to get it a little bit.
Maybe we're better without it.
Okay, well,
You know what I
let
mean?
us know when it's there, and then we can play it.
Okay, fine. 877-301-8970. You know, I should say before we're done.
What?
As someone who I think you know complains about absolutely everything.
Yes, you do.
What's the only thing I don't complain about?
Your sexy air conditioner?
No, heat.
Oh yeah, you like the
and
heat.
humidity.
You like
is
the
real,
heat.
for
Yeah,
some
I like the heat and
perverse
humidity
reason.
too, but today's a little bit much.
No, well, if you take it slow and if you don't enter the outdoors with a negative mindset, you can actually really enjoy it, unless it's like a health kind of thing.
Okay.
You know?
Jimmy from Walpole just tried to fry an egg on the sidewalk. He said it didn't work. He thought he was close, however. And Edward from Milton says his Mercedes SL400 with a retractable hardtop has a decent amount of trunk space.
I don't believe
Jim with the top down. A bag of golf clubs or beach chair and tote bag fits in the back. That's a nice car. Mercedes SL400.
Well, I mean, what does that cost? Like $150,000?
I don't know.
So you're going to be
I
buying
have a
one
Toyota.
of those? I know you have a Toyota.
It's very nice.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go to. Oh, we have some more.
What are they saying here?
A lot of people are saying, but they're concerned
someone
about the
wants a
dogs.
fan. I have, by
they're
the way-
concerned about the dogs.
What do you mean?
They
You know
want
what
to
the
remind us
Tesla
that
has?
dogs should not be out.
You're ridiculing me all the time about the Tesla because you don't have a Tesla.
I don't.
And you know what they have? They have dog mode. So if you leave your dog in the car,
yeah.
rather than killing your dog, which most people don't want to do, other than Christy Nome, of course, you press dog mode on the air conditioning system, and it maintains whatever temperature
Yeah.
you want while you're in a store.
But
or
that's
out
a
in the
bad
road.
idea. You know why? Because people will go by and see your dog in the car.
No, there's your
Big
whatever
sign?
that screen is called,
Yeah.
which is huge, has dog mode on it.
But
so
that
if you look in the
assumes-
car and see the dog,
Okay.
well, if
I
you
mean-
don't speak English, you wouldn't.
I mean,
probably
a lot
wouldn't
of people see dogs in cars on a day like this, and they go crazy. They
know.
call
Yeah.
the cops and
I got
stuff
a
like
ticket
that.
in Provincetown once.
For leaving your dog in the car?
Yeah,
Well, you should have.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
I said it wasn't me. No, I because when I left the dog in the car, it was actually cool out, and it was a mistake, I know, and I apologize
Wow.
profusely.
God, you left one of your kids' dogs in the car?
Yeah, very briefly. I shouldn't have brought
Jeez,
that up
Jim.
because that's going to be held against me forever. I really love these dogs, so it's not like a careless kind of thing at all.
Oh, you just thought it was fine to leave the dog in the overheated car?
That's not true, the whole story. I think I made it up. I can't remember.
Okay.
I think I made it up.
Okay.
Now, look who's with us,
Mary
by the
from
way.
Clinton.
No, we're not. No, the show's over.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary
since
from
we
Clinton.
called, you have
Okay,
15
real
seconds.
quick,
Go ahead,
I'm
Mary.
sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. When I was a seventh grade teacher over in Clinton, we had no air conditioning in the room. And it was, above like 98 in the room. And,
Horrible.
we were just about dying ourselves, and so were the kids.
Wow.
So we decided to take them on a field trip down to the office where it was air conditioned.
Good for you.
One of the most upbeat stories we've ever heard.
Round and round through the office and let them know that was the only place we could, manage.
That is a beautiful story to
Hey,
end the
Mary,
discussion.
that was a
Thank
great
you,
call.
Mary.
Thank you very much. You
It
got a
was.
great voice. Okay,
She did have a
Jared is
great
here.
voice, actually.
Now, Jared does not believe in the wet sheets thing.
Let's see if he has air
We've asked him
conditioners.
about this before. Do you have an attractive air conditioner? Jim has these good-looking air conditioners that apparently he finds sexually attractive.
No, I didn't say that. There was a magazine story. I don't find it sexual.
You told
I do
me that
find them.
You told me that before the show.
I did tell you about one air conditioner. Go ahead. Do you have any air conditioners you find sexually
I
attractive?
don't even know where to go with that. I think I saw that movie about the man who was having a relationship with his air conditioner.
That was called Her.
He found her so attractive.
Her part 2.
Computer.
You thought you were saved by Mary. I want to go back and litigate the dog incident.
Isn't that outrageous?
I really can't believe I
Can
said
you
that.
believe he did
You
that?
said it was cool when the dog went in the car.
And then it got hot.
It takes hours to become hot.
That's right. And the police were called into the scene.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were. And I
remember going
Let's
through
move
every
on from
table
that.
at a restaurant in Westport asking if they owned the car in the parking lot with the
Really?
dog in it. Yeah, it was terrible. There was a golden retriever in this really hot
By
car.
the way, the dog was fine. It was very brief, and I wasn't. No, it was cold out.
Did you
and
ever
it
tell
got
your
hot.
children that?
No.
No, of course not.
Okay. I'll deny it.
Hope
Okay.
So what does the air conditioner look like? Describe her.
It's very attractive. Let's put it that way. But we don't have time to describe it. Jared, what's on the show?
Some people are very attracted to their erotically charged
That's right.
air
Well,
what is on your show there?
So today we're going to be talking about the LGBTQ activist Urvashi Vad. Amy Hoffman has written a book, or produced a book along with Vad's brother that compiles all of her writings, interviews, speeches. So we'll talk about that. We're going to be talking about Ian Berg, the founder and choreographer and composer of Subject Matter, where tap dance is the percussive instrument.
Wow.
And we'll talk about their new album. And then Mary Grant is here, and this is very exciting. She has her summer reading list that she's going to be sharing with us.
She's one of your best guests. She's great.
Yeah, she is
She's
wonderful.
Really
That'll be a good one. Jared, thank you
Okay,
very
Jared,
much.
see you around.
See you later.
We'll tell you about the
Bye.
air conditioner story later. It's too
Okay.
salacious from the air.
It
We're
is.
all shocked.
A lot of people come over to my house, rub themselves up against the air conditioner, even when it's off.
Okay.
Exactly.
Tomorrow we're going to be joined by the Governor of the Commonwealth,
We
Maura
are.
Healey, from 11 to 12. Take our questions and yours. Also, national security expert Juliet Kime, GBH Arts Editor. You just heard him, Jared Bowen. Boston Globe Love Letters columnist and podcaster Meredith Goldstein. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Nia Harmon, our engineer John the Claw Parker, who knows everything,
He does.
and our executive producer Jenny Bologna, plus our BPL staff, Bill Francis, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Jared's Culture Show is coming on right after we are done here. I am Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks again for tuning
Bye,
in today.
everybody.
I hope you can tune in tomorrow, and I hope you stay cool on this really, really hot day. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye.
And thanks to people that came down to the Boston Public Library as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So that we know that we'll end the drive at 7 o'clock tonight with the dollars needed. 888-995-9272 or classical.org.
You may have heard there is a concerted effort in Washington right now to diminish public radio stations like WCRB by eliminating our federal funding, including money that was already allocated for this calendar year. This loss of funding would have a devastating impact because while we rely heavily on listener support to run WCRB, we also depend on public funding to help keep music on the air and free to everybody. We don't know what's going to happen to that funding, so that's why we're asking you to help ensure WCRB stays on the air by giving now. Your contribution has literally never been more important, and we are so grateful for your help. Call 888-995-9272, give anything you can, or call us or go online at classical.org and hit the blue donate button.